Hello, and welcome to the Humanity, where we do the things with the stuff for the people. I am Matt.
And I am Tommy, and thanks for joining us a little later than normal tonight, even later than normal. But yeah, we pushed the show start time back because I can say words to 8:30 instead of our usual 8 because my daughter's in the middle of lacrosse season and she just has games like every Wednesday for some reason. But then tonight, even though my son's baseball season hasn't officially started, I guess there was another team. It was a coach he played for last year. It's like the same organization he's playing for, but a different league. I don't know how that works. Baseball is confusing, but they were short of players. So, like earlier today, the coach messaged me. He's like, "Hey, is your son available?" And he was. So I was like, and he's been so excited to get back to playing baseball. It's like one of his absolute favorite things to do. So couldn't pass up the opportunity, and they won. And he had especially for not playing, like his team, like they haven't even started like full practice yet. They've only been doing like winter warm ups. So for his first game back after not really playing much in a while, he was looking pretty good out there. So that was fun. So all that to say, we're here. So glad you could join us. And for those just hopping on, don't worry, you haven't missed much other than me just kind of rambling. So tonight we're talking about the TISM, or at least in particular, neurodivergence, maybe more generally, perhaps we'll see. Partially because it's Autism Awareness Month, and we figured, hey, maybe we should actually talk about it since we are both autists, or autastic, as I like to say. So yeah, and there's like so many different ways we could go. Like, and then tonight we'll be talking probably primarily about just how like autism and other forms of neurodivergence kind of fit in the culture or don't fit. And the case may be sometimes, particularly lately, now it's kind of become political, and some different experiences that I've had specifically today with some autism neurodivergence groups, well, one group in particular on Facebook, and how they're trying to keep politics out of it. But then this guy's like, well, can we really keep politics out of it anymore if we're actually going to talk about what it's like to be autistic nowadays in
Yeah.
America? And I feel like I've been talking a lot, so you say words, Matt.
Well, I want to say, like, to the political thing is in an authoritarian country, everything is political because
Yeah.
that's how the power structure determines everything. They want to get involved in as many parts of your life as they think they need to, and um, that makes like stuff that shouldn't be political, like what you do in your bedroom, like
Mm-hmm.
the fuck. Uh,
Exactly. Maybe.
yeah, and like whether or not you're autistic, and like autism's apparently a problem to be solved. That's super fucking ableist. Um,
Yeah, especially calling it an epidemic, like it's a disease.
right. It is a
Yeah.
brain wiring. The only way to get rid of autism is to get rid of the people who have it or who are
Right.
autistic. It's not a thing you have. It's like a way your brain works. Um,
Yeah, and it's genetic. So, I mean, the only
yeah.
way to get rid of a thing that's genetic is to remove it from the gene pool. And
Also,
there are
let's point
very
out.
not YouTube friendly words for
Well,
such.
that's why you make lists of people who are different is
Hmm.
eugenics. Um,
Yep.
that's net disabled. I don't like to use the word disabled people, but that's how it's defined legally with the American with Disabilities Act and all that. So
Yeah,
we're gonna,
and the experience of it can be like a
yeah,
disability, at least the way things are structured. But we'll get into that more.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I forget what I was gonna say. Put people on a list. Yeah, so it's a way to do eugenics. Also, let's keep in mind the person RFK Jr. who's in like behind all this stuff. He has a literal brain worm in his head still. It's not alive, but it's still there, and it ate enough of his brain that in a divorce proceeding where somebody was trying to like, I guess he was abusive or neglectful or something, probably both, and as a defense, he was like, I have a brainworm and brain damage, and I can't be held responsible for everything I do. Like, but now he says he's much better. But he's acting like he isn't because he's using
Yeah.
um, uh, autism descriptions of autistic people and scientific and giant air quotes descriptions of it that are like 50 years out of date. Like some of the way he's
Hmm.
talking about people is like in the 50s. Like that's in our country. They were only diagnosing people autistic who uh, basically couldn't be put into the mental retardation category, which is another phrase that I hate, even though it's
Hmm.
one of the descriptions of my daughter's condition because it was, um, yeah, it's her condition is MRFACD, which is mental retardation with distinctive facial features with or without cardiac defects. And it got lumped into the MED13L syndrome. MED13L is a particular chromosome address.
Yeah.
So, like all the genetic conditions caused by abnormalities at that address got lumped into this one category because most of them only had like 20 people with the condition. And it was really hard to get research done or get information out to all the doctors who needed to know info about it. Uh, but Med13L had a bunch of momentum behind it. Doctors were learning about it, and so it made sense to put uh, very, very similar conditions in that same category.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I was going to say before we get into things, but too late. Uh,
Yeah, I'm taking a new medicine.
fun. Well, speaking
So,
of, it's like medicine. What you drinking tonight?
Rare Fog from Abomination Brewing.
Ooh.
It's a triple dry hopped, triple India Pale Ale. Extra
Mm.
rare, extra foggy is the slogan for this beer,
Ooh.
and it
Huh.
is so hazy
Oh wow, yeah,
that
quite the
like
opposite of the truth bomb you had the last couple of weeks.
yeah that like I don't think there were clumps when I poured it, but the haze like has its own gravity or something and it's forming little
Ah,
planets.
awesome. Can we move to any of them? I kind of
And
went
it's a
off
ten
this one.
percenter, 10 and
Ooh,
a half. It was on their
so
last
this,
chance shelf at the beer store because I guess this is like once a year release, and that was
uh,
they didn't have enough to put in the fridge and all that.
yeah. So this should be fun. Um, so tonight I'm having a first time having this beer on the show, but still, I got another one of those Jackie O's variety packs. But this is the one IPA that's not the one beer that's not an IPA in their IPA variety pack. I don't know how they snuck it in, but I'm glad they did because it's good. It's their, let's see, what is it? A hazy pale ale called "Who Cooks for You." I don't know why, but again, I dig the art. It's like
Oh yeah.
the owl with the flower that sometimes looks like his chest is screaming. But yeah,
Aren't they in
it
Athens or near there?
yeah Athens, Ohio. Yep. And also kind of hazy, maybe not as hazy as yours. This is just forming nebula, not exactly planets, but mm. ah, tasty, tasty though. All right. So,
So autism, not everybody who has it is the same. In fact,
mhm,
like we have quirks that like kind of across the board. Info dumps is something that like we'll all do about our special interest of the
mhm,
moment, or
yeah,
sometimes they're permanent ones. Like yours is music, uh,
yeah, pretty
metal
much.
in particular.
Yep.
Mine is kind of whatever I'm on about at the moment.
Yeah. Well, tonight we get to be on about us in a way. So, because I'm pretty sure we've said it before on the show, but I've at least just in more personal life. It's kind of weird saying like I've now gone public with something I've already said on the show, but that's because not everyone watches this. Let's be honest, but especially like people that I actually know in real life, like only a handful. But I actually ran into a guy at the store the other day that I used to work with. Haven't seen in like 4 years or so. Like, and he apparently says like he watches the show. So if you're out there tonight, Nick,
Well, he's
thanks
one
for
of the
hanging out.
quiet ones, isn't he?
Yeah. But hey, like I said, we get it, we get it. But we're just glad you're here, and just glad to know that he enjoys it. So he says he couldn't catch it. He can't catch it all the time, but when he does, yeah, awesome. Um, but yeah, so appreciative of that.
I don't always podcast.
Yeah,
When I do, it's the humanity.
yes, and I'm not, and we aren't real professional YouTubers. We just
No.
play them on you. We just play them on YouTube. um, and Facebook, and Twitch. Also, look us up on Twitch if that's your thing. I still don't quite understand how it works. It seems like the only interaction we get there is bots anyway. But hey, we're glad the robots are here as well. But
Not even
yeah,
very
as I
good
was
bots.
saying, what's that?
They're not even very good bots.
Yeah,
They're
kind
like,
of boring. Like,
go to this website.
and it doesn't even sound enticing. It's not like they're like, you know, yeah, they're not trying to like entice me with titties or nothing. It's just I don't even remember what it is. It's just boring and but anyway. Um so yeah, so I finally have started to just in my more like personal life, like with people and finally on Facebook, just finally came out saying like, hey, I'm autistic, even though I haven't been officially diagnosed, but kind of wondering if I really want to get the diagnosis for several reasons, but we'll get into that more later. But yeah, and it's kind of interesting, like the reaction again. It's mostly like super positive. Like I made a video and like posted it on Facebook on Monday, something like that. I don't remember. Yeah, sure. Um, and yeah, a lot of positive response for that, which I also appreciate. Um, but yeah, I told like some family members over the weekend, and it was a mix, like all positive, but like some of them were like seemed like surprised, and I'm like, why?
You feel like it's like you realize a lot of what happens here isn't normal. You get that, right?
And without naming any names, like other family members, I'm like, it's kind of ironic that you're surprised. Like, if you were surprised now, wait till I tell you about you.
Yeah, you're like, oh, oh, this is going to come as quite a shock to you.
But anyway, but like I said, overall it was positive. Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, it's been so about how long have you known this about yourself? Would you say, Matt?
um, so there's a person I don't remember, maybe a couple of years. It was kind of around the time we were, I think, maybe it was around the time we were wondering if Owen was.
Your
Um,
son Owen.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I should have specified. Um,
That's okay.
or right before that, apparently YouTube knew I was because in my
Hmm.
feed there was a channel I had never seen before. It's I need to watch it. I haven't watched it in a little while. Yo Sam D Sam. Uh,
Hmm.
she is ADHD and autistic, I think. Um, and so she had a video. It was like I don't know, like 12 signs. It's both ADHD and autism. And I
Hmm.
was like, what? Why has this been suggested for me? And I watched it and I was like, oh yeah, that's yep. I'm like that fills all of the questions that didn't feel like ADHD answered. Because there were some things where like, that is an ADHD thing, but I'm having like special problems with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
The
special
specialist
version of
discussion.
whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Tonight on a very special ADHD.
so yeah, so it's been a couple years, and then I was watching a bunch of autistic creators on YouTube talking about like coping strategies or pointing out when this happens to you. That's an autism thing. Um, it's because your brain's doing this, or um, and realizing how much I mask or like pretend to be a me that like blends better, or I thought I blended better. Apparently, I was doing a poor job when I was in school, and I'm looking back and going, "Oh yeah, that's why. That's why."
Yeah. Yeah. It's all coming together. Yeah.
um, just recently, I had an appointment with the. For some reason, my psychiatrist doesn't prescribe meds. There's a nurse practitioner that does that, and I think maybe it's because he doesn't work out of the office. He does a lot of like remote stuff, and so they
Mm.
need somebody who sees you in person and can do vitals and all that for meds. Um,
Makes sense.
and so I had an appointment with her recently, just like a checkup, um, and I was talking about how yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm autistic, and I'm like, I know you can't just like diagnose me all of a sudden, but and and, and she's like, there's signs.
Yeah. Yeah.
They deal with a lot of like lower income people who like myself who have like Medicaid and stuff. So in that category, there are people with more substantial challenges than me, and so
Mm.
when you're uh, one of the, I don't know how to say it, more typical people out of the group, even though you're not. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
they're more laid back just because they deal with like people who have like been to prison or have like been in and out of mental hospitals, all that kind of stuff. So when yeah, they seem to be more laid back because of that, because
Mm.
they have things to compare it to.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. So this is something I found out about myself probably just in like the last couple of years. Like for a while, I was kind of thinking again, haven't been diagnosed for this either, but pretty sure I have ADHD as well, just because my son was diagnosed with ADHD several years ago, and as we're going through that process, I was kind of thinking, oh, a lot of this sounds familiar, like when we were looking into it, but never suspected the autism thing until you started talking about it and like noticing it in yourself, and then I think you started noticing it in me as well, like saying something like, "Yeah, we know our own." So, and then, um, so then, like the more I started looking into it, I was like, "Oh, okay, it seems like yeah, that sounds like it's possible." And then again, as I was learning more about it and like different ways it can like present or manifest or whatever, I was like, "Yeah, that would." I mean, that would definitely explain a lot, but still wasn't necessarily feeling comfortable saying, yeah, I'm autistic is a, yeah, it kind of felt weird, like without a diagnosis and without like really, like even like talking to any like professionals about it or whatever. But, but then sort of ironically, because this group will come up later, it was when I found a group on Facebook that was like for neurodivergence. Mostly like memes and stuff, but it was just people posting like whatever kind of stuff. And then, but it's like as soon as I like joined the group and started reading other people's posts and like talking about their experiences, like I just immediately felt like, oh, I like super relate to these people who are
Yeah.
autistic, and I was
Yep.
like, oh, and people talking about, oh yeah, since I'm autistic, I do this or I have this experience. Oh wait, and I was like, wait, I do that. That happens to me. Like, is that what this is? Is this not normal? This doesn't happen to everybody. It's like,
Yeah,
so yeah. So it was like, wow. So I
that's how most
finally,
people self-diagnose. Is like exposure to other people who know they are, and you're
mhm,
like, and you just it's like it feels like you found your people.
right. Oh, exactly.
Like I have
And
to
then
explain very little to these people about me. They just get it.
in fact, they're explaining me to me without even knowing me, or knowing that they're doing that. Or, but and then another big thing was there was this website that you sent me. It's from this like professional like psychiatry, psychology, whatever group that works with autism. I think they're based out of Canada,
Yeah, it's called
but they base
embraceautism.org.
yep, that's the one. But they basically it's now this still isn't stuff that they say like should be used as an official diagnosis, but basically like the tests and like exams and questionnaires or whatever that they give their people as part of their
Yeah.
evaluations, they just made it available online for anyone to take. So I remember and there's like a bunch of different tests. I don't even remember what all of them are, but I took like the main one, and I remember I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like if you score above like a 27, that's considered significant, and I scored like a 34 or
Yeah.
something like that. So I was like, oh, okay. But then I also took another test that they had that basically figured out like how much you mask, and it turned out I'm pretty good at masking. So like, ha, I even fooled me. But
Yep.
oh, and for those who aren't familiar with the term masking, how would you describe masking?
Um, it is a version. It's a version of yourself that allows you to interact more easily and be accepted more easily by neurotypical people.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of autistic people who know they do it usually think they do it pretty well. But like other people can tell something's different.
Yeah, yeah.
Like girls and women can mask more effectively than men and boys can usually.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's just because in America people expect women to be flighty or off. These
Mm,
aren't words that I know. These aren't good words to use to describe autistic people, but or
right,
women. But
right.
our culture has allowances for women, um, basically like lower standards. um,
Yeah, and yeah, and I think there's a lot of words that we'll probably talk about tonight when it comes to like describing autism or other neurodivergences or just like the experience of it, where it's like the words themselves are really not like actually ideal or preferred, but sometimes just based on the situation, it's like that's just kind of the best way to describe it. Kind of like how you were talking about earlier about it being a disability. Like that's apparently like a big like debate in like the neurodivergent community is like whether these things like autism or ADHD, like whether people consider it a disability, because like you can look at it in the way that okay, it's not like there's something wrong with you if you're autistic. It's just your brain just works different. But unfortunately, the way society has been set up in most cases, it's like if your brain is autistic or on the spectrum or whatever, it's like it's almost the way I would say it's almost like just effectively a disability, just because like the way society is so geared towards brains that do not function that way. If your brain does function that way, you just have a harder time with things. So
yeah, and I think in Western, it might even be harder in Western culture because we're very focused on like productivity
right,
and
right,
working in rows and at like rows and cubes at work, and the way school is set up, school is like an assembly line for children. You're
very
assembling
much.
children, not really teaching them. You're just kind of like give them information to keep in their head long enough to be tested on it, and then if you prove that you kept it in your head long enough, then you get to move on to the next thing. um,
Yeah,
And for about half the classes you took, you won't need to use that. But half the
Yeah,
stuff that you learned, you won't need for what's coming next.
yeah, and really, like, of no fault of their own. It's just again the way the system's set up. But like from the school's end, it's like, oh, did you like score well enough on these tests for us to keep getting funding?
Yeah.
Cool, good enough.
And even at my son's
Yeah.
school, that we're probably gonna have him go to a different school next year. He's going to a school this year that is like set up for autistic kids, but
Hmm.
they don't seem to understand executive functioning challenges all that well. Um,
Hmm.
there's not much of teaching the kids how to do things they're expecting from them. Um,
Which is weird. Yeah, maybe we should like maybe that should be like a big thing that we could do tonight is also like explain terms as we're coming across them. So
okay.
executive
Okay.
function, how would we describe that? We should probably also at some point talk about like what is autism. That's probably
Like,
important to cover too.
well,
But
you
yeah,
know how your brain does things on purpose? The things that you're aware of that it does, not like beating your heart and like moving your legs and all that. Like, yeah, you
yeah, but
can.
like making decisions, doing actions, and yeah, work.
So executive functioning is so executive, just like an executive at a company or at a business or
Mm-hmm.
something, or military, is in charge of
Mm-hmm.
organizing who does what when, and for how long and how much and all that. Like, well, your brain does that, and so it affects everything from learning, emotional regulation, because uh, that's something that we emotional regulation is something that neurotypical people tend to do automatically. Like their brains kind of know where to put things and generally how long to feel something. And somebody with executive functioning challenges, a feeling, an emotion can be more overwhelming um, in its experience than um, it's really hard to explain. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like you can have really strong emotions about something, but it's in that moment. Overall, that feeling could really not be that strong. Um,
Mm,
but in that moment, your brain can't shift off of it because its executive
yeah.
functioning isn't able to tell. It's like the part of your brain that tells the rest of your brain what to do,
Right. And I also just want
which
to
is a huge
say,
deal because it does a lot
mhm,
of things.
yeah, like almost all the things. Yeah, and I do want to just like point out real quick. I guess it's kind of unfortunate that, like I said, with us being starting late tonight because like I had to be places and I literally like got home like 5 minutes before we went on. So it's kind of unfortunate that we didn't really have enough time to like really do a lot of like prep like conversation with this. So
Yeah,
which for as an important a topic as this is like to us and just in general, but just so you know, like what you're hearing from us tonight is basically just from like off the top of our head kind of stuff. So now, fortunately, this just through our own lived experience and things we've looked up, like it's something I'd say we're both knowledgeable about. But just like yeah, just putting that out there that like most of what you're hearing from us, it's just kind of just going as we're going,
I
if that
guess
makes sense. Yeah.
a way to explain. Thanks for doing that. I guess a way to explain executive functioning challenges to somebody who doesn't have them would be like, um, imagine all the stuff your brain is doing that you're aware of, uh, but you don't really have to think about. Somebody with
Mhm.
executive functioning challenges has to think about that stuff. And so there's some days at
Yeah.
work where like automatic things I normally do, uh, I have to think about every step. Or I do things
Mhm.
like I jab a putty knife into my hand because I wasn't paying attention to how I was moving things. Sometimes I have to be really intentional, and those days suck.
Yeah.
Um, and it can learning is really hard. Relationships can be really hard. Um,
Yeah. Multitasking, getting things done. The way I've heard it explained, because
I cannot overstate how impactful it is to have executive functioning challenges.
Right. Yeah. And the way I've heard it explained, and I talk about this with my therapist, because to the outside, and even like to myself, before I even realized that executive function was something I struggled with, was it can look a lot like laziness because a lot of times what it means is you just have trouble just getting things done a lot of the time. But the way I've heard it described is you can tell it's executive dysfunction. Is that actually a term? Yeah. The way it's
Sure.
executive dysfunction and not just laziness is like, okay, laziness is you just can't get done the things that you need to do, but you really don't want to do. So you just do all the stuff you want to do. Executive dysfunction is you have trouble even doing the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, so,
And then there's something called
yeah.
demand avoidance,
Yes.
which
Which that's
people with some people with ADHD. I think these people are probably also autistic who have demand avoidance. Demand avoidance means anything that you interpret as a requirement on you that you need to act on, either physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. Um, y- our brains can interpret that as a demand, like a requirement that's being forced on us.
Mhm.
And what it does is it triggers a sense of a loss of autonomy. And when that
Mhm.
happens, it triggers a form of fight or flight where like our brain just refuses to do that thing.
Mhm.
And like that's where it really can look like laziness to some people because you don't
Yeah.
want to do it. Uh, but you know you need to, so you would prefer to do it. But because
Right.
your brain doesn't want to do it, like the part of your brain that gets those things done is literally unavailable to you. Um, I had that problem a couple days last week where I was feeling stressed out, just like any kind of requirement felt like a demand, and I like literally couldn't do planning for work. Like I had like a mental wall where it I just I couldn't get it done. I was super frustrated, and um, for people with frequent demand avoidance, um, people really do interpret that as laziness, or you just have like bad work ethic, which is what like Owen got labeled as having at his autistic school, and I was like, come on now, like, you're being ableist at an autistic school, and you don't even realize you're doing it. This is not this is
Yeah.
not something we can overcome. There's a culture problem at that school.
Yeah. Yeah. For real. But yeah, that was actually something in my very first appointment with my therapist. Like within the first half hour, she was just like, "I'm sensing some pathological demand avoidance in you." I'm like, "Oh,
That God,
what's that?"
I hate those terms. Pathological. Name one, because clearly that term was created by someone who was feeling really frustrated with somebody with demand avoidance. Because
No.
when is pathological ever used as a neutral term?
Now, in a way, and this sort of is like very fitting with my demand avoidance. I actually kind of like that term because to me that makes it sound like more severe, like it's like an actual issue I'm having,
Okay.
and not. But 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 I guess I came up because when I was just talking about like my life and like my job and like how I'm viewing things, like I think it was a lot with when I was talking about my job because it's like at least as far as like jobs that I've had, it's pretty like low stress, like very like predictable, like especially compared to the job I had before where I was doing like audiovisual stuff for like hotel events, which was just like crazy like amounts of demanding and unpredictable demand and like because
Yep, that's the worst.
it's like you're working with technology, it's like things could go wrong at any time for no fucking reason, and they typically did. It's like so literally I would go into every day, it's like, okay, well here's how things should work today, let's see if that actually happens.
Yeah, and
you
you're
know
working for a
like
company that like maybe isn't super interested in things going well. They're more interested in like the contract and the money. And
right. Yeah, or
Oh, and
even like
your like clients that come and go, like people who do things at the hotel, events and stuff. Um, they think everything that goes wrong is a huge deal.
right. And also just because like the nature of the work, it's like I wasn't like we didn't have things like on call, but like especially like if you're in management or even like when I was just like a low level tech, like it's like if something's going on at the hotel that like we didn't foresee and someone needs to be there, if I'm the only person available, I gotta go in, even if it's like 10 o'clock at night and I'm like already home or whatever. Yeah, but oh, real quick, got a comment here from
Comments.
Daniel Price. Yeah, pathological means regular habit. Like if you're avoiding going to work because of tism, appreciate your use of that, fight or flight angst, and it's a regular thing, your ass is going through a lot of jobs.
Yeah, I've been fired
Yep.
a lot of jobs. Also quit some and didn't tell them I was quitting. Because I couldn't. I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
unpredictable demands at work are not good for mental health when you have demand avoidance. Um, and sometimes you get to
Yeah.
a point where you suddenly realize you're past your breaking point, and you're just like, yeah, I don't work there anymore.
Yeah.
Just, I'm done.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, so I got furloughed from the job like when COVID hit, just because it's like events like at hotels. So my line of work essentially became illegal for a little bit there. But honestly, I was kind of relieved because I just fucking hated it. And we had some events coming up later that year that I was super not looking forward to doing because I felt like
Was it like,
zero confidence in our ability, my ability, at least my ability to, from my end, like what I had to do to pull it off. It's like I have no idea what I'm doing. So, but but to kind of I guess put things into perspective, like I said, like I was talking about like that and all kinds of stuff with my therapist, and she, like I said, it was within like the first 30 minutes of my first session, she like pointed out the demand avoidance thing. But more from Daniel. Thanks for the interaction. Super appreciate it. Especially the jobs where they say, "Here, do this, this, and this," but don't actually fucking show you what to do, and you're standing there like,
absolutely.
exactly, yeah. Because that's one of my absolute least favorite things in the world is like high demand with like low level of like actually explaining what you want me to do and just like assuming, oh, you'll figure it out. It's like, well, I guarantee I fucking won't.
That was
At
one of the
least
main
not necessarily.
problems
Yeah.
at Owen's school.
Mm.
Was, and he even tried to explain to them. He said, "I feel like you're expecting things from me that I don't know how to do, and you're not telling me how." And
Wow.
they
Well,
were,
good for him for pointing that out. That's
yeah.
awesome.
And he talked to the other kids, and they were like, "Yeah,
And he's led a mini revolt, and it was
yeah." He
fantastic.
was talking to the other in quotes delinquents that were trying to catch up on in quotes catch up on social studies work in their life skills class, which also ticked us off because it's life skills class, not social studies class. Like, look, if you can't manage to solve the social studies problem in the social studies class, and half the kids are behind on their work, kind of sounds like a teacher problem.
Right?
um,
Yeah. Yeah, like there's a teacher at my daughter's high school. He like will brag to them, but like, oh yeah, in one of my classes, like everyone's failing, and we're like, um,
you are a teacher,
yes,
no?
yeah, right.
You
But
should
yeah,
teach.
yeah, Daniel again here. Like, oh, great stuff from you tonight. So
Mhm.
thanks for joining us. I'm not sure if I recognize your name from being a viewer before. If you have been, my apologies, but thanks for being here. Yeah, that's a big thing with TISM. Show us visual thinkers. We can read. We just prefer to be shown. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't. One of the things about
Mhm.
autism is something from one context doesn't always translate in our heads to be used in another context. And
Right.
so, like, we might need to have it in writing and shown to us because there's like certain aspects we can't get from being shown as easily as we could in writing. Um,
Mhm.
and also, that's just good teaching technique because you need to be shown if possible, um, or if needed. Hearing it, was it SQ3R? Something we did in social studies class in high school. It was study, question, um, read, write, repeat. And one of those is not an
Hmm.
R, but he was a football coach and he thought it was
Yeah.
funny to say that writing starts with an R.
Uh,
Um,
yep. Yep. What starts
and
with an R sound?
so I don't know why, but I need to say this to get it out of my head. So first you
Mm.
kind of scan it, see what's the overall shit we're learning about here, and then you pose questions in your head. Okay, so it looks like they're going to talk about this and this, and you say, "What about that? What about this?" And then you read it. Now having like intention behind your reading, uh, and then you write the answers to the questions at the end, the chapter or section, and then you do that for the next section,
Mm.
and it actually really did help us learn because you're uh, hearing things aloud is also really important. So yeah,
Mm.
showing people you get the words out loud, you
Right.
get the visual.
Right. Then there's this. Here's some three R's: rote, rehearsal, repetition. That works. Thanks again, Daniel. But yeah, I guess just to kind of put into perspective, like I guess my level of pathological demand avoidance, I kind of like the term, but oh, that's another thing.
There's a lot of terms that
What,
irritate
what
certain autistic
Oh
groups.
yeah, and we can get into that too as well. But something you did just mention about how like you had a thought in your head that you just needed to get out. That's another common thing with autism is
Yeah,
like when we have something that we feel like we just need to say, like we like really need to say it, and like we'll just kind of keep hammering on something until until basically we're satisfied with how much we've talked about it. And you're just
sometimes,
along for the ride.
and
So
sometimes it's just like
strap
for
in,
me, like I was expecting to say it, and so it's
Mhm.
primed in my head, and it's just going to swim around in the priming place.
Right?
If I
Yeah,
don't say.
but I guess to kind of put into perspective, like my level of pathological demand avoidance. So for people who like know my history, like I guess 4 years ago now, yeah, I had stage 4 cancer. I don't. It was probably stage 4 at this point. 4 years ago, I'm not sure. That's another thing. I feel I always need to be like super specific because if I say something incorrect, that's just completely catastrophic. Even if like none of the rest of you give a shit or could ever like verify any of it, or but I still know. But so so when I had cancer, like I there were 2 different weeks where I had to be in the hospital like for 4 days on like some pretty aggressive chemotherapy. I actually kind of enjoyed that because for those 4 days, like I knew exactly where I was going to be, exactly what was going to happen.
Yep.
I basically had no demands on me other than just be here and let us inject you with some stuff and try to eat.
Yeah,
Um,
and you got to pick your food like in advance, not right before you needed it, which is super hard for some reason. But like in advance, you're like, I think I would like pancakes tomorrow,
hmm Yeah.
and
Well,
that
I,
just
I
shows
got
up.
to.
No decisions to be made that morning.
Well, I did get to choose my food like a little closer to when I got it. Like I would order my food in the morning, or it was basically more like an hour or half hour before I ate. But
Oh, okay.
but but
It's a mental ward. We did it the day before.
uh, uh, yeah, they probably do things different there. But
It's a little like prison.
yeah, but I said like the experience, and plus also like maybe just unrelated. Again, just feel like I need to shout out Christ Hospital here in Cincinnati. Like everyone there was awesome, and like they took super amazing care of me, and they were all like super friendly. And so, but yeah, that pretty much it. This, yeah, he said TVs and IVs. I'm good to go. That was my life for 4 days. Like, and of course, like lots of people were coming to visit me, and it was like cool to like hang out. And but yeah, I was just in a place for 4 days. Like I didn't have to worry about chores or work or like literally anything else. Like my job was be in the hospital and take chemo. No, yeah, sure, I kind of felt like shit, and that part wasn't fun. But like I kind of looked forward to my hospital stays, and part of me kind of misses it. I mean, not I certainly don't miss having cancer, but I guess maybe now knowing I can survive it. It's like maybe it's not so bad, but yeah. So that's. But at the time, like I had no idea about like when I knew I kind of knew what autism was, but had did not suspect that I had it all. Had no idea what demand avoidance or any of that was. So part of me like almost felt like guilty about enjoying being in the hospital because I mean it's like this that doesn't seem right that I actually enjoy this. So yeah, so that's maybe something else we can like talk about the whole idea of or the whole aspect of especially before you realize whether you're autistic or have ADHD or like various other neurodivergences or other like mental conditions. It's like before you know you have it, it's like you realize that like something is like wrong or not working or you're just having trouble doing the things that you feel like you should be able to do and it just creates an incredible amount of like guilt and shame in you because you feel
Yes.
like well I just suck as a like being a person or like well we talked about maybe I'm lazy or I'm like careless or I'm not very thoughtful or I
Yeah.
yeah so
There's an old ADHD book called "You Mean I'm Not Lazy, Stupid, or Crazy."
mm, yeah that yeah
And it was written for like undiagnosed adults with ADHD, and some of the stuff in there actually did overlap with autism. Now that I'm remembering it,
yeah
uh,
there's a lot of overlap there yeah
but feeling like
Mhm.
you should be able to do something you can't, um, and because you've been given every impression growing up that these are things people can do, just
Mhm.
because there was no one taught you how to do them. There's just like an
Mm.
assumption that these are things people do. Uh,
Right.
it You internalize that with a lot of shame and guilt, and uh, I think part of that is that autistic people tend to be like really good at being people. Like
Mm.
the what I mean by that is we tend to be if we're able to communicate with people, we can be really insightful. Um, we care a lot about what happens to other people, even if we can't always empathize with what they're going through or emotionally
Mhm.
understand it. Um, like we tend to really want everyone to be okay, uh,
Yeah.
and so when we're not okay, it's kind of like interpret that as our fault we're not okay, and because we don't like it when people aren't okay, and the people who do things that cause people to not be okay
Mhm.
need consequences. We feel like we need consequences, and so it's a lot of
Right.
justice enforcement on ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. But yeah, man. So Daniel with another comment, like I feel like if we don't already know this person, like I feel like we need to be like friends. Yeah. So yeah, most people see it as laziness or irresponsibility when it's neither. Just gotta find our groove. Yep. We don't mind working, just not things that make us go, fuck this shit every single day. Yes. Yes and amen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I I've
Man, when
had
you make
corp
this atheist say amen, you know you're hitting it.
yeah, I've had corporate jobs mostly just when I was doing co-op internships with when I was in college. Uh, Hated it. No, that's not true. I liked parts of it a lot because I worked at a board game company. Lots of autistic people there who were undiagnosed. Um, they're like, "How do people think? Let's make a game that makes them think in a way they like to think." And we're like, I had a roommate at the time who, when I was trying to come up with a game just for fun, a card game based on the stock market, and uh, and I was doing it for fun, like off hours, like on the weekend. There were two other guys from the design school I shared an apartment with in Boston, and one of my roommate who was almost definitely autistic as well. Looking back, his name was Fletcher. Um, Jackass name. He was a jackass, and he's like, he looks over at me, and just goes, "What's up, Bobby Fischer?" who's a an autistic character from a movie.
Ah.
Um, I was like, what? And he goes, "You're Bobby Fischer." So he was like telling me I'm autistic.
Mm. Ooh. Man, speaking of fuck this shit kind of work, so apparently Daniel worked for a telemarketer once, but only for 2 days. Yep, sounds about right. My conscience couldn't handle it. Something in me knew it was wrong and scummy. Sure enough, went to collect my pay later. They'd packed up and left. Yep.
Yeah, we
Yep.
tend to have good intuition as well.
There's that too. Yeah. So speaking of which, now that we're like almost an hour in, what say we actually explain like what is autism?
Oh, it's kind of hard to diagnose. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
there's nothing like can't do like a brain scan to find out for sure. You really have to just ask a bunch of questions of people, and then
Mhm.
the combination of the
Yeah.
answers indicates yes or no, or what type if
Yeah.
it's yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Plus, as I say, as people may know, are familiar with the term, like it being a spectrum, because like that means like it can present itself in so many different ways.
yeah,
Or one way I've heard it is put is like if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism, because there can be similarities like kind of across like different people with different types, but yeah, it also like you got to throw in like it also depends like how good the person is at masking or just how often they mask, like so that can make it look very different. So but yeah, one again, Daniel here with another good point. Short answer, different brain hardwiring. Yeah, I mean, a lot
yeah,
of times, I guess it's associated, like specifically with like social interactions, either just, and this is something that definitely applies to me, and of course, like looking back and kind of making sense of a lot of things. It's just feeling like I'm so often just like not really confident in like just about any social interaction, like feeling like I'm actually reading things properly, that I know how to actually respond, like what do people mean, like how is what I'm saying being taken. Because like a common situation I would find myself in is because like throughout my life, like I find like people generally like me pretty well. Like I usually get along with people, but it seems like looking back, I just have so many memories of like every now and then, like I just be in conversation, just talking, like thinking, "Oh, I'm things are going great." Then all of a sudden, like I'll just say something, and everyone just looks at me like, "Did you just say that?" I'm like,
yeah.
"Yeah, what? What?" uh, like, but they're more like apparently what I said something was that could be like interpreted as like offensive or upsetting, but like a lot of the times I found like they weren't even like upset with me or like actually offended, but more just like surprised and confused. They're like, "Wait, did you just?" And I'm
Yeah, they're
like,
like, "You're so quiet," and then
"Yeah." Then all
suddenly
of a
so
sudden,
mean.
yeah, and yeah, because like, and this is like another thing I've talked about like with my therapist. It's like sometimes I actually have trouble, even just within myself, like really knowing like exactly like how genuine I'm being. Because I'll be like,
Like how much you mean like how genuine you're coming across, or
no, like how genuine I'm actually being. Because like sometimes I'll say things, and it's more like, okay, am I actually? Are these actual words like what I'm like my genuine words, or am I just thinking, oh well, if I say these words, I'll get a positive reaction in this situation. So the way I kind of think of it is more like the words I'm using may or may not be genuine depending on how you look at it, but they are going after the reaction that I genuinely am wanting in the situation. So like
Mhm.
like one thing I get a lot is people will say that I'll say something to them that is like so thoughtful or kind or encouraging, or it's like, "Oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear." But like looking back, it's like I'm unsure if I actually meant those words, or if I knew, or if I was like genuinely wanting the person I was talking with to feel a certain way, like I wanting them to feel encouraged and like support or whatever. It's
It's
like,
like, yeah, you're
well, I know if
accidentally encouraging.
yeah, so it's like I know if I say these words, they'll have that feeling that I really want them to have. And I'm not saying I'm lying. I mean, I do mean the things like one in, circumstance that comes to mind is actually I remember when you and Aaron were about to get married, like you needed people because with the church we were at, like they wanted like basically recommendation letters from like friends and stuff. Do you remember this?
Oh, that's right. Because the person we were having do it was a pastor on staff there, one of the many pastors, because it was a mega church.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so I mean, I was like super honored that they like I was one of the people they asked to like write a recommendation letter. I was like, but also, again, this was years. This is like probably like 13, 14 years ago, something like that.
Yep,
Like
about 13.
it yeah, it helps me because I just remember like we were pregnant with my son during your wedding, and he's 13 now. So whatever, however that math works. But anyway, but so this was before I had any clue whatsoever about any potential like autism or demand avoidance or whatever. So I was like simultaneously like honored, but also crap. Now I gotta like write, but I was also
Right.
so scared that I would like accidentally say something that would make them like, oh, these that I would accidentally like ruin the whole thing. Like so that was my approach. Is like just don't say anything that'll make the pastor think this is a bad idea because I know it's not a bad idea. I know this is great. I really want this to happen, but I was just so scared that I was just going to like fuck it up somehow. But then, so then I remember like I sent the letter to you guys, so you send it on. But then I remember after you read it, like Aaron like responded saying like oh like basically had her in tears like with how like wonderful and thoughtful it was. I'm like, oh, I way overshot. Like I said, I mean everything I said in the letter was like genuine and honest, but I was like, oh, I had no idea that
You're
it
like,
was like
I
actually
guess I'm
that.
very heartfelt.
Yeah,
This is good
like
to
who
know.
knew? Yeah, who knew? Not me. But so here's another comment from Daniel. Yeah, I also enjoy this. My favorite is, but you don't look autistic. And I feel like a Jehovah's Witness, but instead of going, can I tell you about our Lord and Savior? It's me going, hey, this is how autism works. Yeah, I mean, like when I was
I just want to be
talking
like,
earlier,
what did you think autistic people looked like? Did you think we had like deformities? Like,
yeah, I think that's part of the problem is just like so many people are just so or ill informed about what autism actually is. Because I was talking earlier about my experience with like coming out like to people in my life like more in person. Like some of the reactions I'm getting they were more just like surprise, like people saying like really. But then like one of the responses like literally the first thing they said like, oh, but you always did really well in school. And I'm like,
autistic people aren't mentally
yeah.
challenged. Like,
I mean,
usually we're very good at brain things.
yeah. Yeah, no, now like again, it's a spectrum. So yeah, some people with autism it can
Well,
include like some severe like learning disabilities and stuff, but
yeah,
not
no,
always. Yeah.
and autistic people who are who do well in school, there's often a subject or two where they just really struggle, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, I
Hmm.
scored. I was in like a gifted program at like two different school districts, which really just means autistic, because like everybody in there was not neurotypical, um,
Uh-huh.
and like I always did poorly in math, except for geometry. My geometry teacher in high school, my
Hmm.
mom was like, "How's he doing in geometry?" Because like normally I have challenges in math, and he's like, he could teach this class. This guy didn't give out compliments, and she's like, "Really?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, like I'll just." She's like, he's like, I like have to call on other people because if I call on him, he like it's not really helping him learn when I call on him because uh he just
Nice.
says whatever I'm gonna say. And
Hmm.
but yeah,
And,
it's a mixed bag in school.
and an autistic dude came up with the theory of relativity. Just
Uh,
saying, we're in good company.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I have like I like what you said about like you would like struggle with some things, but like it didn't make sense. I feel like that's the thing. Like with me, like I always did really well in school, like especially like math and science. Basically, until in high school when I got to trigonometry and physics,
Oh
and it's like I just hit a wall.
no, there were certain the physics formulas when they got more complex. I was done, and the chemistry equations. Look, there's no
Yeah.
reason for
No.
most people to take those levels of physics and chemistry in high school. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not going into a related field, just take the
Mhm.
regular.
Yeah.
At our school, it was the kids who were going to go to the vocational schools, and
Yeah.
everyone kind of frowned on the people taking those because they were.
Mm.
It was like admitting you were stupid. Like that was how
Mm.
it was interpreted.
That's yeah.
And
Just
really, those
bullshit.
classes would have been
Yeah.
better for me. But I was going to college. I thought so. I went. I just didn't finish.
Yeah.
Took me 3 years
But
to figure out I didn't want to be there.
right? Yeah, but I guess the reason, like, there was no reason for me to take physics in high school, but I thought, but again, it's like, oh, I'm a really smart kid, and this is a really smart kid class,
Yep.
so you should take it. And it's like, yeah, no, because I actually enjoyed chemistry, like, took to that really well. But yeah, like, but I think also looking back, I think part of my problem was also again some different like social situations and things going wrong in said situations about that time when I was in high school because drama, teenagers. Um, I think that was also a big part of it. Like that was kind of taking up my brain space was like all those situations. So like I had like no mental energy left for these
Yeah.
classes that required a ton of mental energy. And
And
also part of it was like,
we tend to be like a year or two behind in emotional development around that age too.
yeah,
Uh, See, algebra didn't make any sense to me, but geometry
oh, I
because
love,
like geometry dealt with like real things, like it
mm,
was applicable to physical objects in the world, and so
mm,
that's why I could get it.
yeah. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed both, but then yeah, I got the trigonometry, and I literally had no fucking clue what any of that what was going on. I remember there was one test we were supposed to like graph something out, and I remember like I had no clue. So I remember graphs that looked like this in the textbook when I was doing my homework. So I just like drew it like with like the certain lines going certain ways. And like I got my test back. The teacher literally just like circled it and like in red and said, "What is this?" And I'm like, I have no idea.
I think
Uh,
ours was called pre-calculus.
See, that was another class that I almost took, but then seeing how I did in trigonometry, I was
Oh
like,
no,
yeah,
it was
that's
trig that I did so bad, and I'm blocking
yeah,
out the name. I got a pity
yeah.
C in that class. I think. Like I don't know
Yeah,
how I
me
didn't
too,
fail.
probably. Same with physics, yeah. Yeah, the only reason I did not flunk physics was because my high school physics teacher was like literally the nicest man in the history of the world. So, anyway, shout out to Mr. Miner, one of the best. But like not, but he actually it wasn't like he was like super late. He actually was like a super awesome teacher as well, like one of the best teachers I ever had. But I highly doubt he's watching this, but he's a good Christian man. But
We
but
are
like
not
in a good
anymore. Just to be
yeah,
clear,
yeah. Yeah,
we're
but
really bad at being Christians. So bad we're not.
mhm. Or I think the problem is we got so good at it, we realized how bad it
Yeah, I
actually.
think my
Yeah,
faith turned inside out. I don't know what that means, but that felt like what happened.
yeah, but yeah. So finally, I'm going to read this thing. I was the same way, especially if I didn't like the class and or teacher. If I wasn't interested, I just checked out. Yeah,
Yeah,
makes the sense.
me too. If I could tell they were bad at their job, I just I had a really hard time respecting them.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. See, but then my personality was like the more like people are like, oh, they're my teacher, I have to respect them. Like I was very like submissive in that way with my personality. But yeah, so
yeah, I was taught by my
yeah.
mom, not in maybe not on purpose, but like not to suffer fools.
Ah,
And the
good
problem
lesson.
was is that, like it was easy to find fools. Sometimes easier than sometimes easier to find fools than there actually were fools to find, and so that was a problem. I found out at my high
Hmm.
school reunion, kids thought I was stuck up, and really like
Hmm.
just my masking persona was stuck up apparently.
Uh, yeah, I apparently had that too. Like I remember there was a friend of mine, like she was like a couple grades lower than me, but like we were in band to get like we were both in the percussion section. We were like really good friends, but I guess she told me that like a lot of her friends thought I was like cold and conceited just because like I was quiet and like when it came to drums, like also to help this make sense, I went to a Christian high school, so we also like when we had like chapel services or class retreats, like there would be like worship band, like for like praise and worship music and stuff. And I was the drummer in the worship band. Apparently, pretty good. At least that's what people tell me. I still think I'm pretty good. Finally, also quick plug for anyone who just follows me on Facebook. I finally did another like me playing drums along with a song video. Like there's a name for that, but I always forget play along, play through. I don't know. I played drums to a song I really like, and I thought it was impressive. So go watch it. The song is called "Fuck Your God" by the band Non Es Deus, which is Latin for "There Is No God." But anyway,
I'm
great
looking at that
song.
band. I'm not familiar.
Ooh, they're German,
Sounds about
but
right.
yeah, they're fun. Anyway, but yeah, so apparently this friend of mine said that like all her friends who like didn't know me, they just thought I was cold and conceited because I was quiet, but also like really talented. So they just like, he's probably just stuck up. And she said like it just made her crack up because we were friends. So she's like, I know you're like the sweetest guy, and I'm like, oh, am I? That cool.
So the cold and stuck up thing that reminded me of what somebody, and I agree with him. Sheldon, the character on Big Bang Theory,
Mm-hmm.
he is kind of supposed to be autistic. I don't think they ever really talk about it. I haven't seen the show very much. I don't.
Yeah, neither have I.
The comedy is not great, and so I don't, in my opinion, so I don't like it. Um,
Yeah.
but somebody said like that stereotype that neurotypicals have of autistic people that were cold and stuck up. Like that's what Sheldon's character is. He's kind of cold, kind of stuck
Mm.
up. He doesn't seem to really have a heart of gold. And I have yet to meet an autistic person who didn't have a heart of gold. Even the nonverbal autistic people that I've met, like I can
Mm.
tell, like I just like can feel it that like they're an awesome person.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
just
Actually,
they're not able
yeah.
to communicate it in the same way.
Yeah. I have a good friend who like one of his kids is a nonverbal autistic, but you can tell like that kid is just an amazing person. But yeah,
Often, those are the parents who think that autism stole their child from them, and that is the thinking behind the organization called Autism Speaks. They look at
yeah,
autism as a thing to be cured, um,
hmm
and a lot
yeah,
of their fundraising is geared towards finding a cure. Uh, but the verbal autistics will tell you that, like, that's highly offensive and you should stop.
yeah. That they should go fuck themselves. At least that's what I hear. That's another thing we can get into. Like then, like now that I've I guess more recently entered the autistic community, just how ironic it is. Like, oh, this community like finding out that I'm bad at like social interactions and like figuring out what the rules are and what things I can say. So now I found my community of people, and now they have like their own rules of interaction and things you can and can't say that I also don't understand. But
And they're
speaking of
inconsistent.
that,
There isn't like
there's that too.
a thing that like upsets everyone. That would be easy.
Yeah, but speaking of like, I will say like the friend of mine who I was mentioning who has like the nonverbal kid. It seems like he is like very much not in that kind of mindset. He very much is like, no, my kid's awesome. Like, fuck you if you don't think so, kind of thing.
I,
So
I think the reason why
yeah.
I kind of so there's somebody that I do work for occasionally, and an old friend of my mom, and her experience with her son was that until he was about two, he seemed to be developing typically, and then there is, or I used to know, there's something that happens around that age in the brain. I think it's related to particular hormones. Um, and these are like development hormones that tell the brain it's time to do certain things um, in development stages. It's like it's time to kick this off. Well, what it tells the brain to kick off um, is a something that causes especially the communication with the outside world to drastically shift. Um, like that's the most noticeable difference. And so people who went through that experience will often feel like autism stole their child, like it's an illness
Mm-hmm.
they acquired kind of thing, because um, it was drastic and sudden. But the thing is, the DNA programming for that to happen was always there. Like that's always what was going to happen. And one of the things I'm concerned about is with this whole like autism research thing. Like, are they are people now going to be like aborting autistic fetuses because they could, like, if they find the genetic code for it, which they almost definitely can't do because it's such a diverse way to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it is a combination of genetic factors that have a particular kind of manifestation in the person.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to find something. But if they think they have found something that
Right.
indicates,
Yeah.
then like kids who do kids who will become adults who do amazing things like in art, kind of all the categories of things that make being alive more interesting and fun and like deep, um, like stand-up comics. Hell of a lot of stand-up comics are autistic. Like
Mm-hmm.
Josh Johnson, who is just tearing it up now. Um, he has like a new set like every 3 days. He But like other comics say things like he communicates with the outside world through bits. Like he can't relate to other people unless he's doing a bit. Like even in conversations, and it's not annoying or anything, but um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
But yeah.
you don't want to get rid of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Daniel says, "Thank you." Pre-existing genes. Bobby Kennedy didn't. Oh, we'll get to Bobby here in a minute, but
Oh, he has good
unfortunately, I have.
genes. Looking at that guy, like a fucking angry
But
tomato.
no, now unfortunately, I haven't seen either of these, so I'm assuming that what you're saying about these things is correct. Like, hey, Sheldon's better than everyone thinking that every autistic person's friggin' Dustin Hoffman shopping for underwear at Kmart and Rain Man. Like I said,
Yeah,
I'll
that
assume
was
that's a correct take, but I haven't seen either of those things. So
apparently
my
he had
apologies.
like an additional uh hate these words, like diagnosis condition. He had like an additional category that he was in that also I think maybe it was savant syndrome or something. Um, so the person that was based on had additional things going on, which muddied the water about what people thought autism looked like or people who were autistic behaved like.
Hmm.
Um, but that repeating words and phrases thing, that is kind of an autistic thing, but it's echolokia, maybe that's what it's called.
Hmm.
Um, from what I understand, it happens more inside people's heads, where there's
Yeah,
like,
savant.
thanks. There's like a phrase that repeats in somebody's head. I have that happen. It's usually something I've said it in conversation minutes
Hmm.
before, and my brain just repeats it over and over again.
Yeah, and something I've noticed in other people as well. Um, but uh, but yeah, I guess. But speak. So now that we're talking about Bobby Kennedy, here's a word: echolalia.
That's
I'm
what it is.
assuming
It
is
sounds
that
like
how
you
it's
get drunk
pronounced?
halfway through. Echo. Ah, yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Well, we appreciate you being out there, Daniel. You're coming in clutch. Um, all right, so I
RFK
guess
man
we
with a brain worm, and it ate his brain, and he's the one telling people what their brains should be like.
yeah. So I guess are we ready to shift the conversation in this direction? Because
Let's shift it. Do you need another
Yeah,
beer? I could need another beer.
I definitely need another beer. So, like I said, this is how little we like really plan tonight. Like it's like what is now we're about to make our second drink segment, which was I guess what I actually typed in the description for the show is to be our main topic. So we're finally getting to it, and now that's just our second drink thing.
Tommy, my glass
So,
of beer has trub. For those who
mm,
don't know, since we're explaining terms, when you're brewing beer and it's
mhm,
in a bucket or whatever you're brewing it in, um, a carboy is another glass container, a
yes,
big one.
hmm
Um, the sediment that falls to the bottom,
yeah,
where the
as
fermenting
it's
is, yeah,
as it's fermenting, yeah, the stuff settles out.
it all the things that make the beer goodness fall to the bottom and make a slurry,
Hmm.
and they are not good anymore. What's there on the bottom?
But yes, yeah, this is what happens when you have time blindness and every other part of your life is squirrel. I hope I pronounced that all caps correctly at the
Uh,
end there for you.
That reminded me
Oh yeah,
when we had a dog before she passed away. I think the
yeah.
only uh, neurotypical being in the house was our dog, and she was a black lab mix,
Mm,
which is like the ADHD is like bred into black labs. Um, I
yeah,
swear she was rolling her eyes sometimes.
yeah. That's why sometimes like I feel bad for my daughter in that way. Like she probably has some kind of like neurodivergence. Um, I'm not quite sure what it would be, but yeah, it's especially when it comes to like executive function. Seems like she is like tops in our little family. But anyway, so now that we're getting on to our again this back back when I was typing the show description and when I was in my younger days and thought this was going to be our main topic. Now let's get on to it for our second drink. My
Yeah,
second drink.
hold on. Can you see this in the bottom?
Ooh,
This looks like floating cottage cheese. Should I drink it?
mm, yes. I mean, I think so, but
All
I'm
right.
me. So,
I'm. I don't know if what would be more gross if it feels fluffy in my mouth or gritty. If it's like
mm, let's
powdery
find
cottage
out.
cheese or oh, oh! No, that the flavor won't go away.
It has a gravitational pull. Yeah.
Ooh, whoa! I've never had anything that bitter before in a beer.
Mm.
That
I
was
feel like I would like it. So,
they do make good
all right.
stuff.
All
Abomination
right. Well, all
Brewing.
right. Well, I'm going to explain my beer so I can stop holding it in my hand. It's bothering me. All right. So I'm back with the Mad Tree Rounding Third Red IPA. Amazing beer. The best thing about baseball season when you're a Reds fan. So it's like we can score 20 runs in a game and then like lose the next four or whatever. Anyway, um, so yeah, Red IPA, one of the best styles ever. So
Our sports teams are always pretty manic in their performance.
yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
"We're amazing," and then next week they're like, "We suck at everything."
Or they'll like suck like for most of the season, but then just get really good at the end when it doesn't matter anymore and they're already out of everything.
And when we have
But
really good players on our team, we feel bad for them.
yeah,
Like Joey Votto
yeah.
never left,
Oh,
did he? And
well, he did end up getting traded, like his last, like we released him or whatever to like, but at least he went to Toronto, which is fine. Like that's where he's from,
oh, okay, okay.
so that was nice for him. If he could, I mean, obviously, I think the best thing, I think what everyone wanted, including him, was for him to retire as a Red. But second best thing for him was Toronto, so at least he got that. But
So, or did
oh
they
well.
basically cut him loose? Did they not want to like pay his salary or something?
Yeah, I think it was. And honestly, I mean, all things being equal, like yeah, he wasn't as good as he used to be anymore. So if you're just viewing him as like just a player, then like yeah, it made sense to cut him. And but just the fact that it was Joey fucking Votto, and
I mean, he was kind of
that's
old, but
But I mean,
That-
it's yeah,
They they never really took full advantage of. They didn't have enough people as good as him on the team for him being there to matter all that much.
yeah. And the way I put it, especially especially when he was in his prime, and because he was like even when he was starting to fall off a bit little, he was still good. But I remember, especially when he was in his prime, though, I was like, man, I don't know if there's another team in baseball or any other sport where there's such a bigger deficit between like the talent of the player and how good the team is. Like, just it was depressing. But anyway, so
The games are fun.
oh
Good
yeah,
beers to
go
go
into a
with it.
game. Yeah, yeah, especially when they still have rounding third. But go into a game is still a lot of fun. But yeah, so all right, so now finally, I guess on to what the according. Oh, sorry, first, yes,
Yeah, I'm drinking Dale's Pale Ale. I got a 6 pack of it because I
nice,
hadn't had it in a long time, and it's just like a good staple pale ale.
nice, nice. All right, well, now that we're almost an hour and a half into it, I guess now it's time to get to, at least according to the description that I somewhat optimistically typed uh, an hour and a half ago, on to our main topic for the second drink.
What is the title of this episode?
Uh, the when autism becomes political.
Oh yeah.
So
Um,
now,
you
so
had
just
an adventure.
yes, I did. So let's just kind of like set this up. All right, so we've kind of gone through basically what it's like to have autism, what it looks like in the culture, and like this is something I feel like we could talk more about. And because another topic related to autism, I guess to give people a preview, I think it's something we might talk about next week. Is more like as it relates to Christianity. And specifically, why apparently, like according to studies that have been done, it's very common for autistic Christians to leave Christianity, and for a lot of very similar and predictable and understandable reasons. So yeah, that's something I want to dig into next week. But
I want to read that study. You said it was a study.
there have been studies, like for me, like I haven't read the studies, but I've heard like from one of the guys who was doing a lot of the research, like he's been on podcasts. He has his own podcast called Christianity on the Spectrum.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched
I
that.
learned Yeah, I learned about him from he was interviewed on Dr. Kip's YouTube channel. I think we mentioned that last week when we were talking with our friend Aaron. Um, yeah, highly recommend those. So yeah, look those up. I guess as a primer for next week for all y'all folks. But like I said, I haven't read the studies either. But he talked about like the research he did and just like the conversations he was having and the reasons like why with autism like may tend to leave Christianity, and he says like he hears this feedback all the time. But my thinking was like it's like he's just like reading my mind and like he's giving my testimony, basically. But anyway, so yeah, I want to get into more of that next week. But for tonight, um, so yeah, autism has become a bit of a hot topic in the political arena recently with the aforementioned RFK Jr. and his like thinking he apparently has any idea what the fuck he's talking about when it comes to autism, or pretty much anything that he talks about. It to me,
The
it just
kind of single-mindedness that he is kind of emblematic of is it is a symptom of brain damage. For like
mm,
you like it's not like hyper focusing like if you're neurodivergent. This is like you really just can't entertain different points of view on that thing. It's like they
hmm
don't exist. Like
yep,
people who think that are just being ridiculous.
right. And I wish I could do the voice, but Smithers, release the hounds. So that was my attempt.
Do you know how
Apology.
many lines he would have on his face if he was a Simpsons character? He would just be like have a pink face and just have like all these wrinkle lines.
Ooh, and hey, look who we got back to the show, Kian. Welcome back. Still not sure what your pronouns are. So
No,
is my man a crip?
not a crip. Just I like blue.
Yeah, he's just a dude in a bandana. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah.
I did.
So
I did used to rollerblade around near University of Cincinnati, wearing I think a blue bandana, and there were one time a group of black guys seemed to get like real angry with me, and I was like, "Oh, I was told this would happen." It's like they were right. This did happen.
wow. Yeah. Anyway, so autism has becoming up a lot in the things that our government's doing. So on the one hand, we got the man who is so like befuddlingly non-qualified to be our Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr. Like seriously, look him up. Like he has like no medical credentials. Like he studied like history and law in college. Like never been a doctor. Like literally, when it comes to like what he's supposed to be doing in government, has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
He's a
But
rich guy with hobbies. That's his
right,
qualifications.
that seems to be our entire government anymore. But so at the one time you have him basically promising, I'm going to find the cause of autism by September, and yeah, like, oh, here we go. So you're part of the Warriors. Warrior, can you dig it? That is a movie I have seen,
Yeah, I haven't seen
but
all
it's
of it,
been a
but I have
while.
seen the important parts with the important quotes.
That's what matters. Yeah.
But no,
So
I did used to do like extreme inline skating stuff and uh, smacked my head too hard a few times. Um,
uh, been there with snowboarding, but so yeah, so on the one hand we have like our fucking K Junior promising to find the cause of autism because according to him it's an epidemic because like have you seen like it's so much more prevalent now, there's so much more diagnosis than there used to be. He's like, when I was a kid we didn't even know the word autism. It's like, yeah, it's called awareness.
also, you
Like,
called everybody retarded. Like that's not also
yeah,
not. That's
yeah.
also not a clear
Or you
diagnosis.
just called him like quirky. It's like, I swear we didn't have autism back in my day. Like, now let me show you my stamp collection that's organized by color. And it's like just think of all the people we used to call eccentric or quirky. It's like that was probably autism. But yes, Daniel confirmed, so I'm going to say that's a true fact. Yes, zero medical qualifications. Literally, almost got 90 people killed on Samoa for them telling them not to get vaccinated. I did not hear about that. Died of measles.
True story.
Now there's a measles outbreak in the U.S. Good job, Bobby. Yeah, 2 thumbs up. I
And
swear
the
they.
the CDC is not really telling people about the outbreak because they've been told not to communicate with the public, which
Right.
is what you want from an
No.
organization that does research and is supposed to communicate that to the public.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think this is attempt number 3. So at the one time you have, on one hand, you have RFK saying, I'm going to figure this shit out, though he clearly has no idea what it is. But then on the other hand, I found out recently that the government has actually been cutting funding to like the actual autism research.
Hmm. And cancer
But here,
research.
yeah, but with the autism stuff specifically, I was reading like articles about that today, and like here's the fun part. Like, you know why they're cutting these is because when they've been examining like what kind of grants to grant when it comes to like research, like renew, it's like they're looking for certain like DEI
Right.
code words.
Yep.
But so like all these things like these autism studies, like for good reason, they have things like inclusion and like accessibility and all these things that are now bad words.
Yeah.
So
DEI is only part of that string of letters. It's DEIA. The accessibility has to do with
mhm,
anything special needs. Um,
yeah.
and they're leaving that off because even Republicans want accessibility because literally fucking every normal person is aware of someone in their life who
Hmm.
qualifies as special needs or has come
Right.
across with someone who they don't want to be punished for having a special need. Uh,
Right. yeah. So it's just one of those things. Like in so many ways, people have so many misconceptions about what DEIA actually is. So like
Well, hold on.
so many.
It's literally just the enforcement of the Civil Rights Act and amendments to it,
Mm-hmm.
or like the American with Disabilities Act. It's literally
Yep.
just the enforcement mechanism for civil rights in the United States. It doesn't have anything to
Right.
do with like affirmative action, any of the bullshit they're trying to hang on it. Like it's
Mhm.
literally just like they're in charge of keeping it illegal to do bad things to people who are
Right.
different.
Yeah, and but people think it's only all about you're this is just your excuse to like hire people of like a non-white skin color, even if they're not qualified, and like
Literally
it's like
not the same topic.
yeah. Now, like race does enter into it, like in the overall picture, but the thing is, like it also includes people like us. So for the people who like for whom this sort of shit actually matters. Like DEI includes us. Like we're autistic, maybe ADHD, which technically count as disabilities. Again, that's
Yeah,
whether
good luck
that's
getting that
problematic.
protected though with the
Like
ADA.
so, but like, but like we're both like for again for those people for whom this actually matters. Like we're both straight white cis dudes. Like we are DEI as well. So
White people
fuck
are
all y'all,
literally the minority on the planet.
right?
So
Hmm. But yeah, but going back to like RFK, I've never heard of autism when I was a kid. It's like, yeah, exactly. When Bobby was growing up, they dumped special needs people off in institutions and special ed classes. His own grandfather had his aunt lobotomized, right?
God, rich people suck so bad. They're like
Right.
they're like in general as a category. I know this is a broad statement, but like
Hmm.
as a category, they seem to be the worst at being human.
Yeah.
At least outside of their like peer groups, and
Hmm.
they just can't relate. Some of them are bad people, uh,
Yeah.
but some of them also just can't relate and don't realize that. And
Hmm. Yeah. So as Daniel again says, like, thanks for your contributions tonight, Daniel. They've been like super on point. So yeah, DEI was supposed to be anti-discrimination initiative, not some forced quota or getting rid of whitey. Yeah, or the way I heard it put, like people their fear of it is like, oh, this means that like all these jobs are going to be filled with like unqualified minority people. It's like no, the purpose of it is quite the opposite. It's making sure those jobs aren't filled by unqualified white people just because they're white. You know, see
hey,
our again, see our current government.
our Secretary of
You know,
Defense in particular,
oh yeah, Hegseth. Oh, I saw a meme recently. It said like,
he's on his way out. He's melting
yes,
down.
yeah. I think I've heard there are reports that they are looking for a new Secretary of Defense.
Well,
Like,
okay, Brian Kilmeade on Fox News. If you don't know his name or who he is, God bless you. He introduced Hegseth like yesterday as the former Secretary of Defense, but he's like former current Secretary of Defense. But Kilmeade is like
nice.
he has peers in that Trump circle. I also think they have dirt on him because there have been times where he's like been panicked. Yeah, Secretary of Smirnov. I think
Uh,
his thing is gin though.
mm,
Uh,
still,
but it is in that clear alcohol category where it's like, is it water or gin or vodka?
yeah, yeah. Or like I saw this meme going around. I had a picture of Hegseth and says like, if I send you this over Messenger, like it means I want to get together and drink and share secrets, which is perfect. And it pisses me off how perfect it is because this is real life. Anyway,
But that is a great response to anybody who's like, we need qualified people in important positions. Oh, like Pete Hegseth? Like, that's
right?
something even Republicans would be like,
No,
"Eh."
no, he's what you call he's what they call a DUI hire.
Oh, that's very good.
I love that too.
Did you just come up with that or
Um,
somebody else do that?
no, that's other
Okay.
people
I
have
was going to say, that's good.
that's been a thing. Yeah, the DUI hire. Yeah, I love that. Anyway, so given all that, and but now so bringing it back to like RFK and his whole thing, and apparently now he's like, we're going to make a registry of all the people with autism and like other, I think even ADHD and like other neurodivergences were kind of included on there, and
Oh,
because he seems to think it's an epidemic and a thing that can be cured, because he's sure like it's being caused by like the food we eat and like different.
yeah.
I
Never
don't even
mind
remember
that
what all
people
the fuck
who
he's
have it
blaming it on, but
don't want to be cured. Like if you
yeah.
are those things, like nobody, like, yes, it's hard to, like, it's hard to be us sometimes, like really hard sometimes. Uh, but I wouldn't want to be someone else going through that. Like, I just want other.
Yeah.
I want it to be. I'm at the point now where like I'm probably gonna have to tell clients that I'm autistic because it's causing challenges for me sometimes. Where like I might have to cancel work because it can be really hard for me to work full time sometimes for different reasons. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think everybody who's autistic needs to stop hiding it from people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason why I say that now is because they're trying to tell people who we are, and we need to be obvious about what people in their lives are autistic or neurodivergent. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
that like when people try to tell them who we are, they're like, "That's not who they are." like,
Yeah. Yeah, because that's one of the things I said, like when I made my little video, like coming out as autistic. Like one of the things I said is like, my hope is that you don't like now that you know I'm autistic and you're like you know how I am, and my hope is that this doesn't cause you to see me differently. Now that you know that I'm autistic, my hope is that this causes you to see autism differently than you maybe had before. Like if you had any misconceptions about it,
I
but
didn't
yeah,
take that angle. I was
what's
like,
that?
I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
take that angle. I was just like Matt Hill is what autism looks like. Hi.
Well, I mean, you may not have like intended that angle, but I think that's a part of that. That will
No,
maybe be a
I
yeah,
just do with it what you're gonna do with it. But I'm here.
yeah, right,
uh,
and looking good.
and we need to be able to find each other more easily if things
Yes.
get hairy. Um, now, something I just remembered that's like kind of doubly insidious with all of this is that it is far more common uh, for autism and other neurodivergent stuff to occur in the trans community
Mm, yep.
um, than anywhere
Uh-huh.
else. Like, there's a link there for sure.
Right.
Because I think it's like 3 times higher. I don't remember exactly, but it's like orders of magnitude higher for the chance of someone who's trans to be autistic than
Right.
than the general population. Uh,
Hmm.
and so there's a lot of um, or non-binary or a pansexual, like, just basically if you're autistic, there's a really good chance you don't care about the cookware, as I've heard it said. Uh, and
Yeah.
so they're already going after piling on trans people who already have a difficult time because our society does not welcome them in general.
Hmm.
Um, and then you put like autism on top of that, and we're we're really just gonna need to like support each other and shit.
Right. Yeah, but real quick, just want to point this out because it amused me. Yeah. Hegseth hires a hooker, gets drunk. Hooker asks him to tell him the deepest secret. Hegseth, do I get a free hour for the nuclear codes? uh,
You really think they
yeah.
let? Do you really think they gave him the right ones?
God, I hope not.
Like,
But I
who's
guess
the other? Who has the two keys? Aren't there two keys that
I,
have to be turned to launch the nukes?
yeah, I don't know, but
I think it might be him and Trump. Now that I
mm,
think about it,
oh,
fun,
fuck.
fun, fun, fun.
Yeah, but I guess to get us back on to get us back on the part that's really pissing me off. Yeah, for real. Kennedy's rhetoric gonna make autistic people like registered offenders now. Hey, just moved into the neighborhood. Got to tell you by law, I'm a registered neuro offender. Yeah, because also apparently we might be contagious or some shit. I don't
Yeah,
know
how much
what.
you want to bet they don't let us
But
own firearms in the near future?
oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, not that I have any or really want any, but still,
I
it's
have
like,
one, but
yeah,
it's not
and that's
registered
cool.
because I live in Ohio and I got it from my dad when he passed away. So
Oh, there
uh,
you go.
go Ohio. But you know
Oh,
what? There's a lot of
uh,
autistic people who are really good shots. So I guess maybe we're like what did the I think he's Finnish,
sometimes,
like the best
sometimes that
sniper in
hyper.
history.
Oh yeah, that hyper focus comes in handy sometimes.
I think it was the Finnish
All right.
guy. He the description of how he was able to hyper focus, like iron sights or like no scope kills. It he was that was some neurodivergent, like he was channeling
Mhm.
something. I don't.
Yeah. All right. So
Back on topic.
yeah. So I guess to like relate this out, like so with all this stuff going on with like how the government seems to be like they're talking about like having registries for people with autism and like saying that it's like a disease, but it's really like a genetic thing, and you're saying if you're going to try to cure it or wipe it out or whatever, it's like okay, there's only one way to get rid of a thing that's genetic, and that's like remove it from the gene pool. That's eugenics. Like
And
so.
that won't happen because
Mhm,
like the reason why we've got a really high instance of ADHD and autism in this
mhm.
country is because uh, the people who came to America initially and settled it were either hyper focused on a goal or made impulsive choices. So
Yeah,
like
that makes
there's a
sense.
good
Yeah.
reason why there's a lot of autistic and ADHD people in the United States.
Yeah. So when it comes to like his rhetoric about like trying to find basically trying to eradicate it or whatever, it's like so no like again in a vacuum, like I would give the benefit of the doubt. It's like okay, I'm not saying this person. Okay, because clearly when it comes to a lot of this stuff, he just has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. So a part of me would say, well, I'm so I don't think he means that I don't think he's trying to like commit eugenics or whatever. He just has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. But given like everything else about this administration that has been very like Nazi coded, I guess you could say, it's like I'm done like giving like any benefit of the doubt to any of this shit, you know?
No,
So
he is eugenics adjacent with some of his thinking. Like part of the reason why he is
mm,
reluctantly in favor of vaccines. Like he just recently was like, yeah, you should
yeah,
probably get the measles vaccine. But
yeah,
part of the reason why he's against all that stuff is because he thinks the gene pool has been tainted by people who probably shouldn't have survived because they're not fit for survival. Um, ever heard a poor person say that? No, you haven't. Like that is a
right,
rich person's problem.
right, yeah. So given that, like that being like the political environment we're in now, and the way that that's probably going to cause a lot of people like I mean there was already like enough stigma around autism and ADHD and like other forms
Yeah,
of
and we were making
neurodivergent.
progress, like good progress.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, so do you want to know what he's been basing all this shit on? Kind of. I don't know if I do. Andrew Wakefield. I know that name, but I don't remember why I know that name.
Just got
A dude that
citizen.
got caught
Uh,
lying and paid to lie so
got no lights
badly,
on.
the Lancet had to print a retraction because the study was so dirt. Now, was that the one? Was he the guy behind the study linking autism to vaccines? Is that why I recognize that name?
Probably, but
Yeah, let me know, Daniel.
they did a very long study. I want to say it was like 10 or 15 years about the link between vaccines and autism. It was huge, like massive amounts of like data from different people all over the place, and they found no link. And even recently,
Hmm.
when there was thimerosal, I think it was preservative in vaccines, there was enough of a question about whether or not that it was causing autism, but like was it making autism worse? I think was the thing that researchers were actually interested in. Um, and so they took thimerosal out of vaccines, and no change in the rates of autism. And it's not an epidemic. It's if you just learn the tiniest bit, you realize that like
Mm-hmm.
it's we people actually know what to diagnose it by now,
Yeah.
and it was it doctors there was doctors and schools now know how to like pre-diagnose people, um, and so that's why it's being caught. And the same thing happened with trans people. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
there's so many people becoming trans. Well, what happened was they got to a plateau, and it was like I don't know, one out of every so many people are just born trans. That's just
Yeah.
that's just the people they be, and
Yep.
uh, we're going to reach a plateau with ADHD and autism. Where like, oh, okay, so throughout history, just this many
Yeah.
people have had have been this way, and
Mm-hmm.
we're just realizing it.
Yeah. 'Cause the same thing happened with left-handed people. Like
Yeah, they used to
literally
think
the same
they were
thing. Because
evil.
yeah, like this is something we talked with Aaron like last week about like when we were talking about like left hand path, right hand path with the whole like subliminal messaging because like the word for like left handed is literally like in the Latin or whatever is basically sinister and like that's where we get the word sinister. So
And your left hand was
ooh,
for wiping your ass in the Middle Ages. So if you did anything with
yeah,
your left hand, people were like, "That's gross."
yeah, but the only reason they use left hand for that,
Colonoscopies on children? Oh man, I have heard RFK talk about gut health.
yeah, I haven't heard about this, but but yeah, so
Poor gut health will cause any brain challenges you're having to be worse.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's true.
for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah. Yeah, but anyway, so given that this is like the climate we're in right now, and like the discussion about autism, and it's basically becoming like a big like political hot button issue. Now enter like I mentioned the Facebook group I joined a while ago. Again, I feel like I don't want to say the name of the group, but because there are other aspects of it I really like, and I don't want to make that the point of this. But really, the point is like, so it's a Facebook group for like neurodivergent people. And it's like just kind of like open discussion, just talking about like what it's like to be neurodivergent. It's mostly like sharing memes. Um, but real quick, I have not seen the movie Working Man, but
Kind of sounds familiar, but I
yeah,
don't think I have.
yeah. But yeah, feel free to elaborate, Kian, and also let me know if I'm saying your name, Kian, incorrectly. And I remember you were on here before, and I also am not sure what your pronouns are. If you want to share, just so I know how to refer to you, but totally up to you. Um, anyway, um,
And if you're against people knowing what your pronouns are, we'll call you Z.
right. And again, like with Daniel, I think like I maybe just like assumed you went by he because like Daniel is usually a he him type of name, but also please and anyone like please correct me if I'm mispronouncing you, if that's the word. Oh, so it's out right now. So I have definitely not seen it. So, all
Ooh,
right.
it kind of sounds like working man taking on the establishment kind of shit.
Ooh, but
Kind of like
I like.
Falling Down esque, which I haven't seen either.
Hmm.
But I remember that
I,
was like uh, working man snapping and becoming an anti-hero.
I do like badass movies, but pronouns
King
are
and Lord.
king and lord.
I like that.
I don't know how I feel about that, but hey, you do you, boo. All right, so now finally getting to the point where I've been trying to get to for almost 2 hours now. when it comes, so this group on Facebook I was talking about, so it's this community for neurodivergent people just come together, like again, mostly sharing memes and like fun things, but basically just talking about like what it's like to be neurodivergent. But now that this is issue is, whether we like it or not, become like so politicized. But this group apparently, and I also found out not explicitly, like, if you join like a Facebook group, like they have their list of rules, and it's actually pretty common for a lot of groups. Like one of their rules just be no politics, no religion, like, which makes sense for a lot of groups that aren't related to politics or religion. It's like, okay, that's off topic. It's can get very heated. We still want to talk about it. That makes sense. But first of all, that's not actually one of their rules, like at least explicitly laid out. It's basically like in one of their other rules about just like not being like what's the word,
Divisive.
divisive or provocative or inflammatory or whatever. But
It's
it
like,
says,
have you met autistic people? We're
yeah,
accidentally
but
provocative and inflammatory.
yeah, but basically it says like don't post anything that's like intentionally like sowing discord or whatever in the
Well, proof
group
it's
or
intentional, first
whatever.
of all. Have you
But
met an
but
autistic
also
person?
but then let me finish. But
I'm
then at the
sorry.
end, it just says this includes politics and religion. So it's really unclear if that means this means no politics or religion, or if it's just mean this includes no this kinds of statements about involving politics and
Yeah.
religion. Like, so does it mean you can still bring it up or no? So
It's like, tell me the rules weren't written by an autistic person without telling me they were.
so I like how y'all threw it to the side. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. Tism. I called in the Matt Dillahunty show with those pronouns, and he booted me from the get go. Yeah, I can. Like, I was honestly, part of me was like, not sure how to feel about you using those as your pronouns because I'm like,
It
I
can
mean,
be
I'm
really.
fine with people not taking things seriously, but I think there's a unhelpful way to not take things seriously, and
I
I
think the
wasn't quite
reason,
sure
part of
where
the
you
reason
were on
why he
that.
booted you was because of how that can sound to people with different pronouns than anticipated.
Yeah.
Like it can sound dismissive, and it's one of those things where, like, yeah, it probably should matter whether you're being intentionally hurtful or not. Uh,
hmm
Also, Matt Dillahunty deals with just so much bullshit from people
Yeah. Yeah.
that he just doesn't want to deal with anything that sounds like it could be bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to the amount of fucks that he doesn't give about shit. So,
Yeah.
but all right, back where I was. All right, so with this group that again is like kind of, at least in their official rules, it's like kind of saying no politics, but not quite saying no politics. But then they'd have other posts like, but then we started, especially with all this stuff with RFK coming out, and like people just like making a lot of posts like talking about it.
Yeah, they feel under threat. Yeah.
So, but then I noticed like all these like posts that people are putting out, like they're being removed. But like, but then or the guys like you would hear like whether like the admins or mods coming in saying like no politics, no politics, no politics. Like, okay, but I feel like these kinds of posts aren't really what, like when most Facebook groups say no politics, like this, it's not quite the same thing that they're addressing here.
Yeah.
Because most of the time when groups say no politics, it's because this group, like what we're talking about, has nothing to do with politics. We want to keep it on topic, and bringing politics into it would just create all kinds of chaos. But in this case, it's like it became political.
Yeah.
Like,
Like
so
an unlike like a bureaucrat is using our medical or personal information without consent to come to what can only be a predetermined decision if he knows when he's going to know. Uh,
mhm. Yeah.
Politics invaded our space.
Right. Yeah. So when people are bringing this up, it's not, again, this, at least to me, seems like not the kind of thing that most of these groups are trying to avoid when they say we don't want to get political because that's not on topic. We don't want to go there. But when it comes to just in this current culture when it comes to just talking about what it means to be neurodivergent, whether it's autistic, ADHD, you know, whatever. Now this is part of what it means. Like, and there's a lot of people out there who are rightfully so, like very concerned and like afraid even. And so people are bringing this up, and like all their posts are getting deleted, like as if they're like being delinquents. Like, we told you no politics. Like, as if like they're just sharing posts like, oh, Trump's an asshole, or I don't like Biden and fucking Democrats, and like as if people are just saying like completely off topic stuff, like just to be political, just to stir some shit. Where it's like, but no, like it's like the way. So I put a post on there this morning, like after seeing like all these people, like not necessarily like trying to be inflammatory, but just literally talking about, hey, have you guys seen like that? Like RFK's talking about like creating registries. Like,
Yeah.
I'm super concerned now.
Like,
What do you
anybody
think?
else scared? Anybody else freaking out? Like,
Yeah, like kind of stuff. So, but like I said, I've seen like all these posts being taken down and people commenting later, like saying like, I don't know why my post got taken down, or other people saying they don't like how all these political posts that are showing up. And like, so I just made a post this morning that just said like, look, and I said like began it with like, do with this post what you like, meaning like to the mods or whatever. Like, I know you're probably going to delete this or whatever, but I just said like, being autistic has become political, whether the admins like it or not. And before it got removed, like 20 or 30 minutes later, that post got like, it was like, well, it was like over 300 reactions, like tons of comments, like mostly supportive, saying like, yeah, I know this, like, you're so right, like, please, like, we need to talk about this is a big concern for us. And like, but then I had a few, but there were a few comments that seemed like upset that I even said that. Like, one in particular said something like, well, like, it's not actually political. If you're seeing it as political, like, that's a choice that you're making, like, to make it political. And I'm like, excuse me, like, how did I choose for RFK to like want to like put me on a registry? How did I choose for them to call like autism an epidemic? Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? And
and this is not. It just as a side comment. This that's not a popular point of view. This was literally on no one's radar, like
right,
in any kind of
yeah,
quantity.
yeah. So that post got removed. I got notified like that my post was deleted, and it's the note from the mods was no politics. Like, so then I was in a bit of a mood this morning, so I made a second post because again, my thing is like, we're not bringing this up because we're trying to be political. It's like, these are concerns of ours that just happen to also be political.
Yeah,
So what I
many
said
of us
was
don't
like,
feel safe anymore. Like, this is important.
right. Yeah. So the second post I made said, okay, if there were non government people wanting to make a registry of autistic people, would we be allowed to talk about that?
Ooh,
Saying
I
like,
don't know. It probably depends. Is it Autism Speaks? Then we can't talk about it because that's controversial. It
well,
really
what
feels
they
like they're
welcome,
trying to avoid a topic that would bring out the trolls, and because it really sounds like, yes, they have volunteer mods, and it sounds like there probably aren't enough of them for a group that size, and they're
yeah,
like, they don't want to have any posts that cause the mods to need to pay extra attention. And I kind of get that, but like, if it's autistic people, a lot of people probably like their biggest connection with community it is in a group about neurodivergent people on Facebook. Like, the
hmm,
largest group they access is probably that. Uh,
yeah,
and they may not have anyone else to be scared with or like reflect with. And then being told they can't do it here, they should go to a political group. Well, no, you don't understand. It's not a political discussion.
right,
This is like an emotional and mental health discussion, essentially, because
hmm,
politics are affecting us. And
right,
it's like, well, you should go to a political group. Like, no, I'm not trying to organize shit, man. I'm trying to
right.
like
Yeah, because to me,
feel
like,
better.
yeah. So here's how I'm kind of looking at the problem. It's like I said, on the one hand, I totally understand. Like, I mean, this is their group. I mean, people who form these groups, like they can run it however they want.
Sure.
It was, yeah, okay, fine. But okay, first of all, they're saying like how much of a headache this is creating for the mods, and like, okay, you volunteered to be a mod for a group of neurodivergence that's an open group that has over 270,000 members. Like, you signed up for a headache. I don't know. I don't know how to break it to you. Like, and then so and I didn't make this post because now I've been suspended from the group from like posting or commenting until like sometime on Saturday or something. But
And then
like, okay, because like it's like, but it's like they're almost just like hiding behind the like no politics thing because that just seems like a standard thing that they can just say like no politics, like, because like I said, put this same conversation in any other context and it's like, well, we're just trying to avoid like very like hot button topics, things that get people like all riled up. It's like, well, first of all, like again, going back to the like people still post about like the Autism Speaks, and like pretty much anytime someone posts a meme or image that involves any kind of puzzle piece in it, then like all hell fucking breaks loose. And it's like, but I'm like, okay, let's just pretend again.
which
Let's just put this.
rule number 7, by the way, like does include puzzle pieces, but apparently those are allowed to be posted.
Yeah, but like I said before, like let's just take this out of politics. Like same topic. Let's just say like Jeff Bezos was out there like on X or whatever talking about how he thinks autism is a disease and it's something that needs to be eradicated.
And
And then
he's
all of
going
a
to build
sudden,
a database. And
yeah, and then all of a sudden, Amazon starts requiring all their employees to report if they're autistic or not. It's like,
and starts monitoring if you have an Echo device
yeah,
or an Amazon device
yeah,
at home.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
and
but then
monitor.
if someone starts posting about that in the group, it's like it's the same fucking issue, but now they don't have the no politics like easy button to hide behind. So it's like it's the same damn thing, but now you feel like, well, we just said no politics, so now like it's like, is this making sense? Like why this
Yeah.
doesn't make sense or
Well,
why?
and it kind of leads me
So
to think that like most of the admins of the group, like the people in charge of that group, are primarily ADHD and not autistic, because they seem to be responding in a way where like they just don't understand.
yeah, now this is a good point. Yeah, and I'm sorry I haven't been keeping up with the comments in the side because I'm in a mode right now, in a mood even.
By the
But
way,
yeah, so
sending it was like 6 women up, basically sending 6 women to space with your dick. Like that sounds like I sent 6 women to orbit with my penis rocket. Like that's kind of a sick brag.
yeah, but yeah. So anyway, so again, like with this group, and again, like this is why I said this is why I'm not mentioning the name of the group, but I'm really more just kind of going after like just this overall attitude that people seem to be wanting to have, and not just that group in particular, but. It's like I said, even like there were other members of the group like kind of agreed, like, yeah, all you people should stop talking about this because it like just because it's politics. And people just have in their brain like talking politics is bad, talking politics is bad. So whenever they see it, they feel like, well, this is just an easy blanket. You're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, things are changing faster than your comfort level. I'm sorry.
Yeah, which again, like I'm like it's, again, this is their group. They can run it however they want. But again, like if you're gonna complain about like having all these headaches, I'm like, look, like you're wanting a group that's like supportive and encouraging for like discussion among neurotypical people and neurodivergent people and neurotypical people if they want, they're welcome to join the group as well because it's open and public. But and they even say so. It's like, yeah, whoever's free to join, you're like, come and learn about us, whatever. But to like, I'm having trouble putting into words, but just it's like just having this mindset of no politics, it's like blinding them or just like making them unable to, or just giving them an easy out to be unwilling to accept like I said, being autistic now has become political, whether they fucking like it or not. But they still try to keep this hard line, well, we're just not going to talk about politics. Like, okay, well, then you're going to be a neurodivergent group where a lot of neurodivergent people don't feel comfortable anymore. if that's the group you want to have, then fine. But I guess my big problem with it is the way they were handling it when people were talking politics. Again, mostly not in any sort of antagonistic way, or in a way that where people are like trying to stir up shit. Which you can make the
Yeah.
argument my posts were not, whatever. But like I said, most people, it's really just that thing of, have you guys seen what's going on? Like, I'm so scared right now. What do we do? And but to be
They're like,
basically
no
treating any,
politics. It's like,
yeah,
I'm still scared. Like,
yeah, but so to me, like, my main issue was like how these people are being treated just for bringing it up. It's like, it's one thing to say, okay, yes, I know this is a big concern, but we're trying to keep this group like politics free. Like, hope you understand. Like, that's one thing if they bring it, but basically just immediately like start like dropping like the ban hammer on people and
what?
basically treating them like they're basically treating them like they're, I don't want to say like they're bad people, but people seem to have this attitude. It's like, what the hell are you thinking bringing this up in this group? It's like,
Yeah. But you know what? I people are allowed to post comments about people bringing up politics, putting that down. So like they're
mhm,
still talking about politics just in the way the
right,
admins want them to or something.
right,
And I even
hmm,
saw an
yeah,
admin like somebody was like, hey, people are posting about politics, and you're like, this is not the place for that, blah, and like that shit. And then an admin
yeah,
commented on the post and was like, louder for the people in the back. I was like,
yeah,
do you realize how you sound to people who are scared right now? Like, do you? And well, I don't know if it was approved yet, but I made a post that was, um, I was like,
probably won't be.
it's something to the effect that like, there's a lot of people with demand avoidance here. Like, we're going to break the rules if we're anxious. Like, that's that's what we're going to do.
Mhm.
And like, there needs to be some empathy and understanding. Like,
Yeah, yeah, but like I said, like I wouldn't be so upset about this if they were handling it in a more like, yes, we understand this is a big concern of yours, but we just want to keep this group
they seem
politics free. And
scared,
if they weren't just basically instantly villainizing every single
right?
person bringing it up,
They
and then
seem scared of
asking,
something.
yeah, it's like, yeah, but yeah, as Daniel says here, yeah, it's kind of the same mindset of the good vibes only people. Like, they think they shut something out, it's not there, which leads to an unrealistic worldview. Or as if I've heard it referred to, maybe this is the same thing, maybe it's not, but at least my understanding, like things like toxic positivity, where
Hmm.
it's like everyone's got to be happy, and it's like,
And
okay, but
even like in a world,
things aren't happy.
no, and even like
Yeah,
before, in the before times, before this, like
the
that
long,
kind
long
of
ago.
thinking that Daniel
Mhm.
described. If if I ignore it, it's not real. That kind of thing. That was never function. That was never a functional way to do things. But there was kind of a place for it when things were business as usual. Like it had a
Mhm.
function. Um,
Yeah.
but now it's not business as usual anymore, and we are shooting through, and sometimes in some ways like decades of social progress or regression, um, where like things are changing so fast. It's not politics as normal. It's not business as usual. Like there's a lot of things in question, and there's a lot of shit that's about to tumble downhill. Like we just had like the worst like day in the stock market's history since the Great Depression. It's like we are definitely going to have a significant recession at least. Like,
Hmm. Right.
and even if Trump like rolls back tariffs and shit, like the economy's fucked. Like nobody trusts our arrangements anymore. It will take time to build that up, and until people trust our trade agreements or anything we do, or the American people trust the federal government, like it's we're in brand new times.
Hmm.
And you the old social rules of like this is not a political group. It's like okay, we live in an authoritarian country now. We're in a transition phase, moving from kind of a liberal democracy to an authoritarian country. I don't know if we'll fully get there. I hope we won't. If we do fully get there, it will take much longer to undo it. uh, so now we have to be like, how do things work in pre-Nazi Germany?
Yeah.
Regress. And that's that like age 2 thing where people acquire it in quotes.
Yeah. Yeah. But speaking of Nazi Germany, this is like
We
another
did the
point.
same thing at the same time. We both like touched our faces like,
Yeah. But something else I was gonna like I kind of wanted to bring up in the group before I was like unallowed to was like okay, like again, this whole idea of, oh, we just need to avoid being political. It's like, well, we kind of can't anymore. It's like, so say like if Facebook existed back in like the 1930s and we were in a group of like European Jewish people, but we started talking about how scary this like Hitler dude over in Germany was. Like, were you going to tell us like, oh, you can't get political? It's like I feel like these mods and admins would have like shut down that kind of talk too, just because like we don't want to be that kind of group. Plus, also one of the comments I was seeing from people who were in favor of like the mods like being so like heavy-handed about like enforcing this is like like because this is a place we want to come to like avoid political discussion. We're like, okay, first, if you're coming to like a Facebook group to avoid politics, like what the like
what are
are
you even doing?
like how
It's like,
I don't yeah
you're on Facebook, right?
yeah it's like I don't get it, but uh,
I know people need their safe spaces and shit, but like that's a very like liberal Democrat thing. Um it's a very liberal Democrat approach to be like, we're like, no, this is not a political space. Or like, that's not how we do things here.
yeah, which, like I said, like, yeah, that would be nice if we could talk about autism and not have it political. But again, if you're wanting to have a group where people are talking about what is important to them as neurodivergent people, then I don't see how you can just say no politics. I'm sorry, like that ship has fucking sailed. like, but again, like from, mainly just because of how they're handling it. Like if it's one thing to say, well, we just don't want to be political, but then for them to be going to the point where they're actually like vilifying the people who are trying to have like political discussion about it, it's like that's where I think they were really like crossing the line. But yeah. So yeah. As Daniel says, yes, this can't be avoided. The Nazis did the same thing before Kristallnacht. They made registry of marginalized groups and made them think it was benign when it was quite nefarious. Oh yeah, and this reminds me of
What
another.
I want to say real fast. So in my son's social studies class, they do like this day in history every day, and he knew what day, for some reason, the Crystal Knocked happened on. And when that wasn't the this day in history thing, he was like, well, I've just lost all respect. he,
Hmm.
he was like, how dare they do anything on this day in history other than talk about Crystal Knocked? He was like,
Hmm.
it was something about the Revolutionary War. They did this day in history.
Uh, yeah, yeah, but speaking of like things with how current things are resembling that era, and like so like there's that poem that people keep bringing up where it's like first they came for this group, I didn't say anything because that's not me, and then like it goes on and on, but then finally they came for me, but there was no one left to say anything for me. But it seems like the attitude that these particular like neurodivergents are like, we just don't want to talk about politics, and how the fuck dare you talk about politics. It's like it's almost like for them it's like we need to add a new line to the poem. It's like, and then they came for me, but I didn't say anything either because I didn't want to get political. It's like okay, like I said, yeah, it's your group, you're free to want to avoid this discussion, but I'm afraid it may be at your own peril.
Yeah, there's a whole
and
group.
you may be part of the problem now. So congratulations.
When you're at a point in your country's history where there's a huge amount of people who refer to themselves as the resistance, I think we're past avoiding politics.
Right. So yeah.
But YouTube is not YouTube. That's not safe either. Facebook is not a safe place for political discussion. Um, really, anything owned by anybody who was at the inauguration in that like rogues gallery of CEOs behind him.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll bet they weren't there by choice. I bet they were there or he would retaliate. And yeah, so I I think they were there just trying to buy favor. I don't think, or avoid consequences. I don't think they're there because they support him. But anything owned by those people that's a social media thing, especially, is not a safe place to discuss certain topics. Um, I think people need to be especially careful about anything that could be construed as support of violence, um, because they for sure are keeping tabs on everyone, and there is for sure a hierarchy, like a list. Like some people are flagged more than others as potential anti-state actors. Um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, we're in different times.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, that's I'm still like considering whether or not I'm gonna like stay with the group because they're great. Like there were like some people like recommending like, hey, if you want to talk politics and like neurodivergence, there are other groups for this. And I guess one of the admins for this group was also the admin for another group that does talk about that. So people were like throwing that link out there. Um, so I went ahead and joined that group, but so I'm going to kind of see how that goes. And I'm like, because part of the thing again that I love about this like other like the main like neurodivergent group I've been talking about is because like I said, this is part of how I kind of discovered that I'm autistic because of like relating so much with, and I have had a lot like a lot of other like great like posts that I've made or just interacting with other people on theirs, and it's been fun. But then also there's still like the like debates like, well, it's Autism Awareness Month. It's like, well, we don't want awareness, we want acceptance. Make like change the name. It's like some people are just never happy with
Like
however you
take what
talk
you
about it.
can. Like I understand
Yeah.
everybody has their own triggers for like stuff they've been through and all that.
Mm, yeah.
Also, like you, you take whatever the best is we can pull off at the moment.
Yeah. Which again, like if it's an open group of like over a quarter million people in it. So it's like
From all over the
having,
world, apparently.
yeah. So having any kind of attitude of like, well, you can't talk that way. It's like, I, I yeah. But yeah. So, locked your account in one of two forms. The
Wow.
government need to get it back. Said, no thanks, too invasive. Keep the account. Fair enough.
Wow. What did they think you were doing? That's like,
What did you do?
that's messed up.
Mm-hmm.
That's like they must have like thought you were really good at being a bot, or or they're
Yeah.
like, we need to hassle this dude because he, he's aware of too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So either acceptance makes it sound forced, like you better accept my autism or else, rather than hey, be aware of autism. Yeah, there's that too. I mean, because honestly, like people are saying, like well, we don't want just awareness, we want acceptance. But the problem is, like, there's so many people that still just do not, either they just aren't aware of autism, or even if they're aware it's a thing, they aren't really aware of, like, they aren't accurately aware of it. Again, like going back to like my story about like coming out to people I know and like saying, hey, I'm autistic, but then having the response of, oh, but you did so well in school. It's like, okay, they are clearly not fully aware of what autism really is. So yes, we still do need just basic awareness of what the fuck it even is before we can get to the acceptance level. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
you're just like,
Awareness is a
yeah.
precursor to action. So like it does. I think part of the problem is like the autism awareness stuff that has been like pushed out there as like, here's what we're doing, raise awareness about autism. It's really like there's a lot of it that's bullshit and it is performative and is done by people who just want to, usually politicians or organizations that want to look like they're being inclusive and shit. But like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, awareness comes before action. It comes before acceptance. Um, and there aren't enough people aware of important aspects of it to get important things done. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so you got to aim for the lowest common denominator if you're trying to move a bunch of people. It's dumb um, and annoying, but like it's how math works.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So we're getting to the point where we've only been going for like still under 2.5 hours, which for us is on the short end. But since we started later, it's you're feeling like we've gone longer, maybe.
It's a
So I guess,
two-person support group here. That's really what it is.
yeah,
2+.
yeah, we appreciate the pluses tonight. Um, but yeah, so at this point, I guess I'm thinking like I'm cool, just kind of like wrapping it up. Or if you have more to say, or if you maybe want to go to like in our just between the two of us little private chat, like option B.
Oh yeah, we could pull option B, see what happens.
All right, so well, since what was it Lord and whoever requested. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a link out in the chat for whether it's Kian. And again, apologies. Like, you still haven't told me if I'm mispronouncing your name, so I'm just going to assume that's it. You or anyone else, or Daniel,
Or they're
the other.
amused every time you say it wrong.
That could be. I mean, I amuse me. So I just put a link out in the chat. So if anyone wants to like click on that link and join in, discuss some more thing. Like I said, I'm willing to hang out for a little bit more. Well, Matt's just kind of dying over there apparently, so jump in now before he croaks.
That was
I
that
guess.
was a lot of THC at once. That's what that was.
uh, Good times, good times. So yeah, we'll like. So if you're interested in hopping on, like, yeah, maybe leave a comment because I know sometimes it can take a minute or two for you to actually get on. So just so we know you're at least attempting if you want. Um, yeah, so that's like I said, that's kind of my thoughts on the whole thing. It's just like, especially when it comes to like that Facebook group, it's like, yeah, I mean, really, my point was like, yeah, I know you kind of, even though again, and they said they're probably going to amend the rules to be more explicit
I
about the
wonder
no
what that's
politics
going to
thing.
be.
Yeah, but I'm just like, okay, but clearly, and people like throughout the day today, like, because I kept checking back on the
It's
group,
like the
like,
problem isn't the clarity in the rules. That's not what's happening.
yeah, because like other people, like, it wasn't just me. Like I said, there were like plenty of other people posting like throughout the day about it and getting removed. So, and all the admins are complaining about how much of a headache it is. Oh, and this is one of the things that also got me in that post that you mentioned, where this one lady was talking about how much she like thought it was so awful that all these people were posting. Basically, like the post that wasn't talking about politics but was talking
Yeah,
about how they didn't want to talk about politics, so they essentially were. And all the mods and
like
admins were like, "Yeah, thank you so much," and yeah, louder for the people in back. There, one of the mods like literally said like, and he ended his whole spiel with like, because this group is supposed to be about neurodivergency first. And I'm like, okay, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I wasn't making these political posts, and all these other people are making the political posts to make politics first. It's like they're posting them because they are holding like neurodivergency first. And this is a thing that is currently affecting neurodivergent people. Like, how the fuck can you not see this?
I
So, So to me, my angle is more like, yes, I get it. This is your group. You can have the rules whatever you however you want. All I'm saying is, as a member of this group, I should be able to say, hey, maybe reconsider that. If you're wanting to avoid the headaches of trying to enforce this impossible to enforce rule, maybe just change the rule.
Like
And
maybe like don't be a dick and political.
right, or like maybe like in the what is usually the real purpose behind those like no politics rules is like don't allow posts that really are just political and have nothing to do with neurodivergence. But when people are talking about neurodivergence and it just happens to be political,
Yeah.
it's like,
And you could also say like if it's about your personal experience of how something is affecting you, like that is also just like good I language instead of you language, to like quote therapy speak. Um,
yeah, yeah.
like I am affected this way by this, and then instead of going, this is evil because it's Republican or some shit, you know what I mean? Like that's
Hmm.
just political. Even
Right.
if you are like all Republicans are evil bullshitters, and like
Hmm. Which I
also
mean, fair enough, but
RFK is being mean.
yeah, no. So again, great point here by Daniel. Like, what are they going to do if a shock trooper shows up at their door to arrest them for being autistic? They're going to say, "Sorry, no politics," and think they'll just leave? Exactly. Like, just because you don't want this to be a political issue doesn't mean it's not.
I just want to be like, you don't want me. You don't. Like, do you realize how? First of all, how good we are at judging you in a way you can feel it without us saying words. And like, we're just gonna organize your prison better. Like, we're gonna make you look dumb. That's what we do. We're better at things than you are. If you take us into where you are, we will make you feel dumb.
Right?
You put enough of us in one place, dude, we're gonna know how to like turn that jail upside down. Not just get out, but like just it's gonna be broken forever. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're
Yep.
kind of amazing with puzzles, and the ones of us that aren't are good at encouraging the ones that are.
Right. Exactly. We're a team. All right. Well, we're not getting any bites on the join us live link, so that's cool. Um,
I hold
yeah.
on. I don't want to say everything we've been talking about how authoritarian it all is, and some bullshit, and it looks terrible because like this looks it rhymes really well with things that were terrible in the past. Um,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Ooh.
someone has joined. I'll finish what I was saying.
Hey. Yeah. Finish, and then I'll bring Kian on. Yeah.
Something that I think it was the guy who has the channel Secular Talk on YouTube, which is mostly just news and not religion, which is weird because it's called that. But he was like, they're not. He's not a. The Trump administration is not aware of what's normally called the authoritarian deal or something like that, where the reason why people tend to tolerate authoritarian regimes long enough for them to like pull off a lot of shit is because they're doing other things that people want really well, but that's not how Donald Trump's brain works. Like if you give him an inch, he's like, give me three. And you give him three, he's like, give me nine. And like it increases exponentially each time.
Mm-hmm.
There's no I give you this, you give me that. It's all I take this and then I take more.
Yeah. Pretty
Which
much.
is how you cause a resistance to build up quickly and the authoritarianism not to really ever take firm hold like in Germany or Italy. Uh, Also, he definitely has dementia, and probably by the end of this year, his symptoms are going to be like horrendous. JD Vance is going to be taking the lead more, and he lies like a bad actor, like
Yeah.
and
It's
has
gonna
the
kill more votes.
charisma of his
Yeah.
left nut. So
Yeah.
this ends this all escalates and ends way faster than any point in history
Hmm.
because technology.
Yeah. All right. Well, you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Let's bring Kian on. So
Yeah, that's good.
there's no camera. Can you hear
Yo,
us, Kian?
I can hear you
Hey,
fine, man.
awesome.
Can you
And
hear
I can
me?
hear you.
Yes,
Yes,
Awesome.
Matt, can you hear? Cool,
I
cool.
can hear.
All right.
I
So
have ears to hear.
what's on your mind? And Kian is, am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah, that's correct, man. I wanted to,
Awesome.
I think on the last show, I was bringing up spiritual experience,
Mm,
and, direct revelation of the divine and so forth.
mm,
And I brought it up in the form of a lot of neuroscience today studies it in research, and they refer to it as mystical experience. And
hmm.
yeah, I think I might have left a link on that page of the last episode
I
of
forgot to go to that.
where you could actually sign up and you
Oh
know
yeah.
if you wanted to, and you would be surrounded by professionals, and they would dose you with a high dose of a psychedelic. Um, and
That sounds fun.
I guess I'm curious as to whether you guys would ever um, find yourself in that type of hot seat and consider something like that.
I
Yeah.
I have considered. Um, so I'm open to the idea of mushrooms or maybe ayahuasca. Although I hear that can be great, but also a really rough experience with someone like a spiritual Sherpa for the journey. Um, that that could be really interesting um, and helpful. I hear for a lot of people, um, but I don't. The way I kind of consider something like that is that those particular substances kind of help tune your brain into other things that are also happening simultaneously to right now. Um, and so I don't know if I would consider it spiritual. I would consider it like an additional layer of reality, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. And
Mm,
I think the reason why people make this distinction is because a term that's bandied about is usually the term supernatural. And
mhm,
people often associate that with that which is not natural, or that which defies the laws of physics, and they can't
Hmm.
sort of enmesh these things to make sense that they may be ultimately one. And what I mean by that is that even the professionals at Johns Hopkins that talk about mystical experience, they're not necessarily saying that these things are beyond, the laws of physics.
mhm,
They will acknowledge right away that these experiences are a natural phenomenon. We're not talking about something airy fairy or something out of a fairy tale.
Yeah,
uh, and so they I think the disconnect comes from the content of the experience, that volunteers, when they undergo this phenomenon, they express it as something that is transcendental. In other
hmm,
words, like a common characteristic is, people will describe it as like, I felt as though, I had a perception that was outside the bounds of space and time, but that's not necessarily to say that it was something supernatural or magical. It's just that this is a common characteristic of this phenomenon. And I think that's where that kind of blurs the distinction between people who are just being introduced to this type of stuff, and they don't know how to I guess make the line there. And I think the professionals are at great pains to really put forth that distinction, that they're not talking about something that's not natural. In that sense, they're talking
yeah,
about a very natural experience that has been happening for centuries, for millennia, for time immemorial. and
Hmm.
and they can induce
Yeah.
it in their volunteers. And so it's very different from that type of confusion there. And that's why I really stress the notion that you should, before you put forth judgment on it, you might want to experience it for yourself before you cast it aside as like, oh, it's just your brain on drugs or something like that. Because they will right away tell you that this is not exclusive to psychedelics, that people experience these things in near death, in deep states of meditation. And
Hmm.
so you can't really pour this on, oh, it's just your mind on drugs.
Yeah.
How would you respond to that?
No, I think I don't think that's the angle that either of us would take. That it's just your mind on drugs. I mean, it is the
I might.
brain being impacted by the drugs. So there is the outlet that, not the outlet. There is. Uh, I could see how people would be like, well, if different people are having similar experiences on the same drug, like maybe that's just what this drug does to people. I could see somebody taking that
Hmm.
perspective, and until something is, and I think we might be close to this, or it might be happening with the UAP and UFO discussions and the overlap with spiritual categories and things, where unless something can be taken out of that experience that is testable and like can be verified, like this is another layer of reality. And by testable, I mean like something that you could show to someone else that here is some truth, verifiable truth beyond things we understand that came to me through this kind of revelation. Um, I think unless something like that happens, it's very difficult to say for sure this is another layer of reality, like a
Yeah.
supernatural thing that's not religious.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And
Yeah.
these were some of my initial assumptions when I started studying some of this research.
Yeah.
And I like when you say an initial layer of reality, like I think when I finally started studying this and really looking into it, it became quite clear to me that the professionals are definitely not attributing it to we have similar brain structures, therefore we're going to have similar experiences with these substances, which is a very common criticism. And you could also say, like, yeah, we're not talking about some glimpse into some kind of Mortal Kombat realm, like that everyone's tapping into. But the what it seems to be, and what a lot of these professionals will say, is that it seems to be part of the structure of consciousness itself, in that
Mm.
what they'll try to, the type of analogies or metaphors they'll invoke. Maybe you've heard of Aldous Huxley spoke of the mind at large. I don't know if you ever read The Doors of Perception or
No.
any of Huxley's work. Well, Huxley, there was this notion that he developed because he was dosed with mescaline that inspired that book. And he came up with this notion, the mind at large, meaning that your brain right now, as you sit there in your sobriety, well, maybe you're not sober. I saw you drinking some kind of type of pale ale. Yeah, yeah. What are you drinking? If I'm curious. You don't have to disclose that. Okay. Well, anyway,
Don't have to
uh,
disclose what.
what you're drinking currently?
Oh yeah, we talk about it all the time. Yeah, this is a Mad Tree Rounding Third Red IPA. That's what I'm drinking.
Yeah,
But okay,
mine
so
is a pale ale, Dale's pale ale.
No,
all
no,
right,
yeah, I
so
figured. Yeah, I could tell just by looking at it that y'all were drinking some type of your IPA and pale ale. Yeah,
yeah,
I could see
yeah.
it just by the
Okay,
color.
so here's where my brain is at in this whole discussion. I don't know if you want to say it's maybe stuck on this or whatever. Okay, so you're talking about like I'm like take these like hallucinogens or whatever it is, and let's say I have this experience. Okay, to you, what is it that I'm actually experiencing? Like, not, I'm not. I don't mean like the specific like minutia of like
Yeah,
Like so I guess to an analogy of what I'm really getting at is like when I say like what is the conversation I'm having with you right now, I'm not meaning the specific words, it means I'm talking to Kian.
Yes.
So in this situation, what is the Kian that that I would be experiencing if
Sure.
I do this?
No. I was about to get to that, and
Oh
the
good.
reason I mentioned the mind at large is that I don't think it's necessarily some type of spiritual realm, a la Mortal Kombat. That the reason I say that is because the mind at large, what it represents is that your brain right now is filtering reality. And
Hmm.
and so his idea was that the ego or the brain has evolved in such a way that it has to deal with the here and now, three-dimensional space for survival. And so what you're getting is a very small signal of reality itself to deal with the here and now, the manifestation of reality that you deal with on a daily basis. And so when you have these filters removed, you sort of deal with an onslaught of the full spectrum of realities, so that, in other words, the mind at large is the consciousness with all filters removed, such that you're experiencing the totality of reality. So, it's not a Mortal Kombat realm. You're actually experiencing with the utmost realistic version of reality your brain can process, at its
Hmm.
highest degree, so that you're experiencing all reality right at this moment.
Hmm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess my next question is why do I want to do that?
Well, I don't, people, when you hear about stories of ayahuasca, of people going down to Peru, they'll come back saying, "Whoa, I vomited and did diarrhea at the same time." You might say, like, that sounded like a bad experience. Why would I ever want to put myself through through that? But the thing is, like, when people seek those experiences, usually they're at the end of their rope. They're
Hmm.
finding ways to survive. They're suicidal, and they look to this as kind of a last resort. And it's that type of mentality that where they find themselves in that situation, and the experience ends up being quite beneficial, as a lot of the studies have shown. Like, they have terminally ill cancer patients that they can't even have dinner with their family because death is so weighted on their minds that they would completely ignore everyone and void everyone out. Whereas after this experience, if they choose to volunteer into these studies, they can then have that family dinner. And death is, it's almost as though they experience death, and so they don't have to deal with it any longer
Hmm.
in their psychology,
Yeah.
because they already confronted it. And
Yeah.
that's sort of the notion that people are left with, and a lot of a lot of the research that, that's why, I think I left a lot of links for you in my last comment. I don't know if you went through any of them, but I'm
Yeah, we
willing
should
to.
go back because I did want to go to some of those and I forgot to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only had efficacy with terminally ill cancer patients, but it's got people to quit drug addictions, whether it be smoking cessation, methamphetamine, heroin, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
People have enhanced their lives through it, and they've had life changing experiences on the par of the professional at the time. He's now since deceased. His name is Dr. Roland Griffiths, but he would his volunteers would compare it to a death of a parent or a birth of a child. These were very profound, spiritual experiences that they held this phenomenon to that regard. And and so I think I told you, I called into the Atheist Experience once. I tried to
Right.
mention it to Matt Dillahunty, and of course, before he hung up on me, the obvious conclusion to that scenario, I did tell him, like, man, why don't you try this for yourself? And he got spitting mad, of course, and hung up on me, and he went on like a 30-minute tirade of, like, why I'm an asshole for even suggesting the possibility, you know. And
Mm.
but to
Well,
this day, he admits that he's never done it, and
yeah.
yeah, so that's
Which
why. Go ahead.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't know if you caught this part of my story, but like at this time, about like 4 years ago, like I had stage 4 cancer, and I made it through just fine without anything like this. But so I will admit, like I guess maybe it's like how late it is and maybe how much I've had to drink, which is less than last time we interacted with you. I will say that much. Um, but I guess where my brain is like kind of stuck on is like trying to remember why this is even something we're talking about, because like I'm trying to remember, like in the episode we were I know we were watching a video responding to this guy asking questions about atheist,
Mhm.
ask questions to atheists, and you brought this up, but I guess my brain is not connecting like where does all this stuff fit into like what we were talking about. I guess to put it in a extremely crass ways, like why do I care about any of this?
I
I
think
guess
I might recall.
so. So
I
because I mean, we're talking about like having spiritual experiences, and or whether or not what we thought of those experiences, whether we thought that was God or not. At least that was like the context where I was probably talking about. It was like, is this God or is it just natural stuff? But then you're bringing
yeah
all this stuff like with the hallucinogens. Like, are you saying that's God? Are you saying that's something supernatural? Or are you just saying it's just another way to experience things? In which case, I'm like, okay, it's another way to experience things. I don't feel
yeah
like it's something I need. Like, so what? Why are we even talking about this? I guess is where my brain's at right now.
yeah okay. No, I can definitely see that. And I think you took offense to something I said on that last time, and it was something. Yeah, I mean, you got really passionate and defending your case, and I think it's very possible for because I'm very interested in the notion of near death, and I talk to a lot of people. I hear from some people that they don't remember a thing, and yet some people it's the most transformative experience of their lives. There you have these opposite spectrums. So obviously, it's very possible to I think become to perhaps be near death and not benefit from that phenomenon. And I don't think there's definitely not enough study on this to definitively say either way, because to this day, near death experiences are still studied by neuroscience. They're not, it's not something that they're like, oh, we already have this pinned down, we can cast this aside.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that was the case, we wouldn't study them today.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
um,
So
and yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I guess again, like
Like, what's the
I
point? You
guess where
said,
my brain is going with this, and like I guess like I'm trying to like connect this to like the context, because like we were talking about. So I guess maybe first question, like, so are you a theist of some sort? Like you believe in
yes,
God? Okay. Any particular kind? Or you're like Christian,
yeah. You
Buddhist,
see,
anything?
where it led me, I've had this experience for myself. I was 23 when it happened, and I'm 39 now, so I've had a long time to think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
where it led me was even what the professionals recognize in these studies, they refer to it as the perennial philosophy. And it's a
I've heard of that.
perspective
Yeah.
on the perspective on the world's major religions that sees
Mm-hmm.
mysticism at the very core. That despite their incongruencies and differences, that at the very core you can find a mysticism practice in the various world's major religions, such that the
Mm-hmm.
Holy Spirit, Nirvana, Samadhi of Hinduism,
Right.
so on and so
Right.
forth, are various ways of saying
Mm-hmm.
one and the same thing about this very phenomenon that I'm talking about, because it
Mm-hmm.
is part of, you could say that it's part of our evolutionary biology. It's something intrinsic to human beings, and and it's
Yeah.
despite that the fact that it's expressed in many ways and amongst many religions, we're all still referring to this very biological thing that neuroscience
Yeah.
is studying today.
Yeah, but I would also like. I feel like I need to mention there are plenty of things that we've developed biologically, like through evolution, that and such that the way we perceive reality is actually very inaccurate. But it's something that survived evolutionarily anyway, because that inaccurate view has just like for other reasons turned out to be like a true survival advantage. So I don't. So I guess okay. So what I'm trying to again like kind of funnel like where I'm going with it, because I'm again trying to remember like the conversation we are having before, because like a lot of what we were talking about in reacting to this video and like the way we were viewing spiritual experiences, at least like for me, and I don't want to speak for Matt here, but a lot of where I was coming from is like, okay, the way I view these spiritual experiences now is very much connected to like why I no longer believe in God. So to you is like, is there anything about these experiences that you're talking about, like on these hallucinogens and these studies, like with John Hopkins, is that to you like connected to any basically like reason why you think we should believe in God? Like, is that the
Yeah.
angle you're
Okay.
going for here? Or?
I definitely hear you, man. So I could ask you, like, man, where is that your criticism coming from? Like, why instead of like finding a way to naysay this, why not be curious and explore the research a little bit more
Oh,
yourself?
it's not so much that I'm
hold on.
trying to
I will
naysay.
say, Kian, I know you didn't mean to, but the way that was phrased does trigger reflections
Okay.
on poor
I
experiences
apologize.
we had.
I apologize. Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay, let me go
so
ahead.
where I'm coming from, this it's not that I'm trying to be a naysayer. Like I am totally curious about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well,
where it's
you are playing devil's advocate.
I'm not so much being a naysayer. Like, well, this definitely isn't God. Like you could say I'm skeptical. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to think this is God until you can prove to me that
Okay.
this is God.
Fair enough.
Or I would say, honestly, I wouldn't even put it up to you, because to me, if there is a God who wants me to know they're there, I would put it up to them to prove it to me. And the fact that I would have to listen to you and even add this other layer of, I not only have to listen to you, but I also have to go on psychedelics to experience it. That really makes me
Well, I mean,
extremely skeptical that any kind of God that wants me to know them actually exists,
okay.
and this
Well,
is
wait a
how
second.
it's supposed to happen. That's
I did
kind of
make
where I'm at on this.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I did make the point that it's not exclusive to psychedelics, and you know what I mean. So that's kind of a straw man there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but like in any of those like non-psychedelic means, I'm like, yeah,
Okay,
I
fine.
still don't. Yeah.
You do okay. Okay, your skepticism does come off like a devil's advocate. Like instead of being a little bit more on a sort of route to positivity and being curious. But no, I respect that, and I'll answer that
Yeah.
question. And so,
Yeah, because basically, if I could put it like a more succinct way, like if there is a God who wants me to know him, why do you have to explain it to me?
yeah, and see, I think that assumes a certain theology. Like, in other words, like you're assuming the nature of God there, as though like a God, like you stood there and God stood here, and like why should I go through this third man when I could just go directly to God? You know what I mean?
Okay, but then if you're trying to explain God to me, aren't you assuming that that's the nature of
No.
God?
What I'm trying to explain is that when people, okay, so I mentioned these studies, and they do have atheist volunteers, and they found in that even in the majority of their atheist volunteers, they no longer identify with atheism any longer. So what's happening there? Let's question that. I think what's going on, and I can attest to this because it happened within me too, is that people often develop a different way to relate to the God. So like people no longer see God as this like anthropomorphic entity that is also bandied about amongst these circles that people talk about, you know what I mean? And so people usually end up with a kind of perspective that is more I don't want to say pantheistic, but a term that I like better is panentheistic, which is very different from
I
pantheism.
used to be a panentheist. Yes, I guess in my final form as a Christian, or as I referred to myself as like any kind of theist, I was a
Okay, cool.
panentheist. Yes.
Well then, right
At least as
there.
far as I understood it, I could have had it totally wrong. Who
All
knows?
right.
But
No, that's cool. That's excellent, because I think with you
Eh.
doing that, you were developing a more sophisticated way to relate to the term God. You know, like where it's
Mhm.
not like this, like, oh, it's this anthropomorphic being, and
Yeah.
it's his fault that I don't understand, and he should be the
Yeah.
one that displays it all to me.
But basically, like, but that was part of the point for me with like losing my belief, was like being like more sophisticated, if you want to call it that, or more
Yes.
malleable.
Okay.
But then I basically got to the point. It was like, okay, but there's all these people with all these different views of God,
Yeah.
and there's literally no way to tell if and which one, if any of them are
Yes.
actually correct.
Okay.
So to me, there's
I-
no difference between like I said, this is why I ask about things for proof, because like no matter what form of God, like
yeah.
I'm not necessarily like looking for proof of a certain type of God. I'm looking
Yeah.
for proof of any type of God, and I have
Yeah.
yet
No.
to see
Okay. I
any.
totally get what you're saying.
So
And let me see.
yeah.
I'll try to be brief. I know you guys been on for a while. You're probably ready ready for bed.
This is still relatively short for us. So
Okay. Well, a term that a lot of people have a hard time grasping, and I think it's I would never. Yeah, it is hard to grasp it unless you've had an experience like this. And I don't know if you ever heard the term non-duality.
Oh
I've
Um,
yeah.
heard the term. Yeah.
yeah. Well, this term refers to a state of consciousness where, you sit there, you see the screen, I'm talking to you. We have this impression that we're separate entities, right? And what I'm saying that there's a mode of consciousness where that doesn't exist at all, where your consciousness is merged with the external reality such that they become literally one, so that all
Mhm.
past and all future are one. And it's not something you reside in. People talk about ego death. Ego death is not some permanent state. It's a temporary state of mind that people experience.
Mhm.
And inside that temporary state, there is this impression where all past and future coalesce into the moment. And the reason people that have this experience have such a hard time trying to describe it, because we're used to tense time, like, oh, I'm going to do this yesterday, I did this tomorrow, we're going to do this. They cannot describe a state of mind where in which all points in time are experienced
Hmm.
simultaneously. That's why it's
Yeah.
so ineffable. That's why it's so profound.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
Like
I'm totally on board. Like, and I agree with like our view of time as being this like fundamental like A to B to C like
yes,
linear thing. Like I understand. Like yeah, that complete could be completely false, and like it's like I've heard people describe like there's different theories of time, and like time, like our
yeah,
perception of time might just
Miss
be like
Taggart's
basically
P
a
theory.
function of entropy or yeah. But again, it's like okay, but man, I'm having
Well, okay.
trouble.
Well, what I'm trying
Yeah.
to get at is that most people are unaware of this phenomenon in consciousness, and
Hmm.
this is the very thing that inspired the religions. That Buddha experienced, that Christ and all the prophets, and that our science has barely scuffed their feet at the edge of the door, trying to understand this phenomenon, which they're calling mystical experience, and which we're kind of on at the frontier of understanding this in neuroscientific terms. But this is the main stage of religion, and as long as you avoid this, a lot of these terms are forever going to be mysterious to you. The Holy Spirit, God, so on and so forth. um
I'm gonna jump in there real fast.
Go for
So we were both Tommy and I were involved in like spiritual warfare ministry, and we had experiences, the Christian version of experiences that you're talking about, and uh, things like the Holy Spirit and like real time healings and like giant emotional life changes in people just like on the spot happening, like healing and all that mental healing, emotional healing, like all of that stuff is like real and tangible to us because like we were around it and we like went through it. Um, and I understand that you had an experience that is where
transcendental.
yeah where like the nature of everything I should say was revealed to you, but more like you experienced it. um I've had similar experiences since embracing marijuana. Not to like severe degrees, but to the point where like um I done smoked some theoretical physics into my head where I was like, oh, that's how things are. And then I watch a video later and like theoretical, physics people are like, yeah, that's totally how it is. So I think we're all on our way at this point too, and I don't. Things are being revealed in what you're talking about and what people are experiencing with UAP, UFO kind of stuff. Um, and I think what we have been interpreting as God is something else, and there's a lot of baggage with the term God that for most of us, especially those of us who had like religious trauma experiences, um, anything that reminds us of that kind of like personification of a deity, we reject in the same way as the things that hurt us. So um, I think there's a lot of people who would be more open to scientific explanations of what you're describing. Not that you need to like dilute it or something, but uh, some we're all whatever you're describing, we're all experiencing it right now. Um, and I think there are different ways to experience that, and not everyone has a transcendental experience of that in life. Am I making any sense?
No, no,
I think
I
so.
agree that most people haven't had this experience. That's why you don't hear about it too often, except in these,
Hmm.
studies where, people that volunteer themselves, they don't really go about their lives and preach it, you know.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I think, the fact that these studies even exist, I think people are becoming more and more aware of this phenomenon. And but
Hmm.
I think the entire point is the phenomenon in and of itself. Like I'm definitely not going to convince you here tonight. I would, that's why I stress the experience. I would love to hear your thoughts after you guys having this experience, and then you can judge for yourself. And
Yeah.
another thing I would add is that because not many people are aware of it, the nature of the phenomenon is so little understood. And what I mean by that is that it occurs on a spectrum. And even in the professionals in this field will say that people who meet partial mystical experience, they will have experiences that are very unique to their personal history. So that if you grew up with Christianity, you may see Christ on the cross, or Muhammad if you're Muslim, Gautama if you're a Buddhist, so on and
Hmm.
so forth.
Yeah.
However, higher on the spectrum, when you have this non-dual consciousness that I refer to, where consciousness merges with the rest of reality, then you're no longer an entity relating to something that's out there, whether it be some kind of religious symbol or a person. Everything merges as one unity. And so people that have what the professionals call a complete or unitive mystical experience, they express invariably this this unison, this complete concurrence with all the rest of reality, this collapse with within space and time, within past and future. That becomes the universal aspects of this experience. So you're no longer dealing with the personal history of someone's psyche or their subconscious.
Hmm.
um, and see, if you don't understand that distinction, that the nature of that phenomenon, then you're liable to conflate these things. Like, well, why do near death people who are near death, they see Christ if they grew up in USA and they're taught Christianity? Well, of course they're not
Hmm.
understanding the full spectrum of this phenomenon. Like, because even Susan Blackmore, who studies professionally near-death experiences, she does say herself that yes, they reside on a spectrum, and people who meet this the higher end of the spectrum will report this unity. People who meet the lower spectrum will report more unique experiences to their background, to their upbringing, the
Hmm.
cultural
Yeah.
upbringing, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see, that's another distinction to make that people often blur the lines between.
Yeah. So I'm trying to put things into words. Um, I
Man,
understand that.
I guess all I ask, take your time. All I ask is, look into it, and potentially, if you have an opportunity, experience it for yourself. Man, if I don't know where you guys reside, but you come to my house, and I will dose you personally.
No,
Where are you located?
I'm in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, see, we're in Ohio, so
no,
yeah.
I think you are, based on my own experiences, and I had a near-death experience. I don't really remember it exactly. I think you are, well, that and that and weed. I think you are probably correct in what you're saying. The thing is that like it's really hard to explain the experience, kind of impossible to other people, or convince them of the value of the experience you had
Oh,
when they
tell me
haven't
about it, man. I've
had
been trying to
themselves.
do it for years.
No, and I'll say it might not be a good idea to try to convince people. And I
Yeah,
say that
no, I agree with you.
because just I think being evidence of the experience you had yourself, like living the impact that it had on you, living that around
Yeah.
other people, you can kind of open up someone to experiencing something additional just by sharing, just through experience, kind of sharing your perspective
No,
with interaction.
all right. I love
Because
you for saying
like
that.
not everyone is in a place to
Experience that.
hear
Yeah.
or even hear what you're saying.
No,
And my
yeah, no,
concern is
I agree.
my concern is you might be pushing you want really good things for other people that you've experienced,
No, you're
and I'm
absolutely
concerned
right.
you might be pushing that
You're right, man.
harder than.
That's why I get hung up on. That's why people have backed out even before the conversation begins. You know what I mean? But see, that's not my goal with you two. I didn't join this stream to convince you on the spot. Like I wanted to at least plant a seed. Introduce the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah,
That's
and I will say, like, not to like first of all, I also just want to make sure I put out there, like, totally appreciate your interaction, like, and you do seem like a genuinely nice person. Like, this has been like great conversation. Like, hasn't like gone. At least I hope hasn't felt
appreciate
like
it.
doing antagonistic or anything. But yeah, it's so on that level of it. Yeah, sure, this has been great. But I guess for me, and maybe this could totally just be like baggage that I'm still dealing with and processing. But like again, just the fact that this whole conversation started just in the context of like us talking about like reacting to a video. This is why we don't believe in God. But but have you thought about this? But like, so for me, like the experiences that you're describing, again, like where my mind keeps going to is in the context of me saying, well, I don't believe in God for these reasons, and then you're coming back with this, and my brain is like, is he trying to convince me that God exists? Like, what's the point of even all this? But for me, it's more like, okay, you're describing these experiences, like I'm like in total agreement. Okay, people are having these experiences, but in my mind is like, okay, we still don't actually know what these things are, so for someone and I'm not saying this is necessarily what you're saying, but again, this is just how a lot of this maybe just sounds in the context of this. If someone is trying to say, oh, but these experiences are somehow evidence of God, it's like, well, if we don't know what they are,
Yeah.
then we can't say what they are or
Well,
aren't
okay.
evidence of. So basically, and this is like, I just want to like say all this mostly just because, like, I mean, you guys can keep going, but honestly, like my brain is getting
No,
near the end if I haven't already passed the end
we'll
of its
end it here.
usefulness. But let me finish. Is fuck, I already forgot what I was going to say. That's
I
how useless
apologize.
my brain is getting right now. Yeah, basically, what I would say, like, you're talking about these experiences, and I'm like, whether you or anyone else wants to say this is God or something supernatural, it's like at the end of the day, like until like someone can tell me exactly what these things are and why specifically I would want to do it, it's like I don't feel like my life is missing anything for not having these experiences. Like I'm totally fine with as
Well,
much
that's
as
good,
fine as
man.
anyone really can
You
be.
know,
So I'm just like, so
I,
it's cool to talk about it, and honestly, and I don't want to like say like like discourage you from talking about it, but like
No,
honestly, like pretty much everything you've said, like I've heard all this before. Like I'm kind of aware of like all
hey,
these ideas. I'm just like,
awesome.
if I'm really blunt, like right now, I just kind of don't care.
Well, hey,
If
man,
I'm
you should have
completely
told me.
honest.
I didn't have to chime in the first bit. Nah.
No, like I said, we appreciate
I,
we
I'm
appreciate the
joking.
interaction. Like you said, you seem like a nice dude. This has been a nice
I'm joking, man.
conversation.
I'm
But yeah,
joking.
yeah,
I no, if you're
yeah,
good, like I
yeah.
said, it approaches people when they're at the end of the rope, usually. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's when they get to experience it in the midst of life. You seem like the type that maybe, like I said, it may await you at your deathbed. Like, and that's fine because that's the natural process for most people, I think. You know what I mean? But I guess what I'm saying is that essentially what this experience does, and like you, even if you think of it in terms of taking psychedelics, it's an
Mm-hmm.
alteration to your perception. Like you talk about like, oh, God, and you assume like we know the definition of that term. Like what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that
Well, no,
you
I
know
don't assume we know.
no, no,
Actually, I'm
no.
assuming we don't know the definition of that term, and
Okay,
that's the problem.
fine. But okay, well, if that's the case, then you're not an atheist. You're a theological non-cognitivist, like, where the term is meaningless.
Okay. I will say that is a pet peeve of mine. Don't tell me what I am,
No, no, okay. I'm not
because
saying.
here's what I mean by atheist is I do not believe in any gods.
Mhm. What do you
So
mean by God? Like I can ask that.
whatever, okay, literally anything that anyone has ever told me is a
Okay,
god,
fine. So
I don't
any
believe in.
definition that you've been proposed, okay, fine. But what I'm saying is that this experience alters your perception in such a way that the term God, become it's void relative to the meanings you currently understand, and you developed a kind of a new perspective on
Okay,
that
but
term
how am I supposed to know that those definitions, that way of seeing God, is actually the correct way,
through
and that
this
that's
phenomenon.
okay?
Like,
But how do I know that this phenomenon is trustworthy to me knowing what a God actually
well,
is?
I mean, you would have to experience it for yourself, right? Like I said,
But
judging.
Ah,
the
okay,
Yeah,
but
challenge
even
is,
if I okay, but even if I did, how would I know that that experience is accurate?
man.
hold on. I think the reason. Okay, let me jump in. Having had born again experiences where like we felt confirmation, like you're describing, and then we realized that a lot of that was some emotional manipulation. That like, and in my own reflection on that, if that was a real experience, there was so much stuff put on it that now when anybody discusses anything in a similar way,
Hmm.
especially with similar terminology, we're just like, I don't want anything to do with that. Like,
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
so I
but
think if Tommy had a similar experience as you're describing, which he may have had while he was watching a music video and a gummy,
mhm.
it,
That was
it
good times.
it was like an intense awareness of just like the materialism of it all, in a spiritual kind of feeling way, but what was not experienced or described as a spiritual experience. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, and one more thing I just want to add. So you're saying that I can't really, I mean, not whether you're necessarily telling me I can't call myself an atheist, but at least saying, like, well, I at least haven't fully explored all the various definitions of God. But part of me, like, that's part of the problem is
yeah,
I, no one can give me a like, so I could say I reject definitions of God, but I feel like I haven't even
yeah.
been
But
given any definitive definition of God to reject. But if you're telling
sure.
me that in order to understand God, I need to have this specific experience on psychedelics or whatever. It's
Well,
like, well, then that's a God. If that's
okay.
the only way I can
Well,
access him,
listen to
then
the
I
way.
really don't care.
But
So,
listen to the way you phrase that. Like, no one can give me a coherent definition of God. Why does someone have to give you a coherent? Why can't you figure it out on your own?
well, that's the
Like,
thing. I have also
that's a
tried on
valid
my
point.
own to figure it
okay,
out,
all right.
and
Well, what
I've
I'm
got nothing.
okay, I guess what I'm trying to relay to you is that when you have this experience, you're, uh, you're privy to an insight that allows you to think about God in such a way that it is
And
coherent.
what I'm saying is, if this is a God that requires me to go through this specific process to even have any concept of it, then I don't care.
Well, you see, but that's that's a bias. Like it's like it's almost
Everything's a bias. What?
Sure, but no, but in other words, like let's say this was a way to understand God. You're like, okay, if I have to understand it this way, then I don't care for it. But you're avoiding the very thing that's going to allow you to understand the term. You know what I mean? Like you're
According to you.
Yes, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
well,
people have told. Okay, look, people have told me all different kinds of ways.
according
Oh,
to
if you
me.
want to know God, you got to do this. No, if you want to know God, you got to do this.
No,
So to
no,
me, no
but no,
offense,
no.
but you're just another person
Okay,
telling me another
fair
way that
enough.
I need to
But okay,
experience God. So
hey, I love you guys. My ideal episode would be I want you to come on my channel after you both have had this experience. Then we'll talk.
like, look, to be honest, I really have no interest in having this kind of experience. Like,
All right, well, fair enough,
so
man. But you see, then
I couldn't because I'm working with with different medications right now, and I couldn't.
Okay, fair enough. But you see, from my perspective, I'm be like, man, these guys weren't really curious enough to understand the depth of this philosophy and where the theology takes you to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, well,
Okay.
we'll end it there.
But there's lots of things I'm not curious about. Like, I'm not curious about discovering the entire discography of the Cranberries.
Sure, you're
Like,
not.
I'm not curious about
Well,
learning like the.
I'm not curious enough to learn the depths of quantum physics, but that's not what we're discussing here, man. I'm
right,
saying,
but what I'm saying is like just like so you're saying, well, because you're not curious about this one specific thing that I'm telling you about, that means you're not curious about like.
Well, I mean, it's part of your identity, right? Like you call yourself an atheist, don't you?
Yes.
Well, okay, you don't want to challenge that?
I think there might be an
in other words,
assumption in there.
you're basically telling me I wish not to challenge my atheism. I'm comfortable.
No.
Well,
no,
then,
like
then what are you telling me?
want to have it challenged.
Like,
which
okay,
is why
do you
we're
have
talking to you.
what I'm saying is, do you have any idea how many different ways people have told me, well, if you want to experience God, you got to do this. I cannot possibly challenge my atheism in every single way that everyone who wants me to experience God suggests to me.
Look,
that is not possible for me.
I'm not trying to tell you something. I'm trying to challenge you to an experience.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I have had so many people tell me, oh, if you actually want to experience God, you need to do it this way. I cannot possibly test every single way that people tell me you need to do this to experience.
Hold on, wait. I'm not trying to tell you to test every experience. I'm saying all you got to do is go to Peru once and try ayahuasca.
Okay, but you're telling me I don't need to test every experience. You're telling me I only need to test your way of me. So
that's it. Yeah, that's the challenge. That's it. One and done, my friend. That's it.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying is like I've heard this from so many people. So yes, from your perspective, this is the way to do it. But do you understand, like, from my perspective, to me, you sound like literally every other person who has ever told me you need to do this to experience God. But for you, I'm only not an atheist because I'm not testing your way.
No.
Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds to me?
No, I disagree with that because it's not simply my perspective. I think a lot of people that have my position will argue this heroic dose.
Same with every other way I've heard people tell me that I need to do this.
And yet you've never tried a heroic dose.
And I've also never tried speaking in tongues. I've never there's so many things like that's.
Yeah, but that's a lot of people don't even understand that speaking in tongues is it's a methodology to aid in contemplation. Like people think it's some absurd thing. It's like a mantra in meditation. Like when people recite a mantra, speaking in tongues is it serves the very same function.
If what you're saying is true, I think it would also be true that not everyone is in a place to discuss this or even hear it. And so like if we were in the like if you and I were paired up in this like men's camp prayer tent thing that Tommy and I used to do, I would instruct you to read the room because it's not. Isn't completely the audience for what you're um, trying to convey to us. Um, because in my experience, it isn't something that you can. So I'm a big fan of the Tao Te Ching, especially like if you the phrasing, like if you try to describe the way things are,
Yeah.
like then like you've already ruined it. That kind of.
Well,
Um,
okay. If you want to bring up the Tao Te Ching, the
uh-oh.
very first line in that book is the name that can be named is not the eternal name,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what I'm saying is that this phenomenon in consciousness, it is like it's a kind of fusion with all reality,
Mm-hmm.
like at once. So like, so it doesn't matter where sentient beings arise in the universe or within the multiverse. It doesn't matter. Let's say there's different universes and sentient beings arise in the multiverse. Wherever they arise, there is this phenomenon that unites them with the totality of all existence, with the very fabric of reality. And they refer to it by many names. They call it Brahman, Allah, God, so on and so forth. And so the reason why this Taoist sage said the name that can be named is not the eternal name is because it doesn't matter where these sentient beings arise from and what names they develop for it. They're all referring to that one reality.
Right. No, and like this is like you've discussed this with this already. I I don't think this is the yeah. I don't think the timing. I don't think this is
Hey,
the right
okay,
environment or the time to push this further.
fair enough, man. I know there's a time limit before the stores close, and we got to get some more beer. So, I'll end it here.
I'm
Hey, I
still
appreciate this.
stocked, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate the discussion, brothers, and thank you for letting me on, man. I love you guys both.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate. Yeah, like I said, you seem like a nice dude. I appreciate your like attitude and willingness to talk about stuff. But yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, like no offense to you, that's like I
Well, if you're ever in
like
Texas,
I feel like saying I don't care is maybe too harsh. But
well,
yeah,
I didn't
like I
care
said,
either. But before I had this experience, you know what I mean? I didn't give a shit either. Like, if you're ever
yeah.
in Texas, let me try to change your mind.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's like kind of all kinds of experiences I've had. It's like I've been to the Grand Canyon. I think that this was an awesome experience. But if someone tells me like I don't really want to go to the
Yeah,
Grand
but
Canyon, I'd be
I
like, all
wouldn't
right, cool.
compare
Yeah,
Niagara Falls or the Grand Canyon to a mystical experience, my friend. Man, it's two very different things.
yeah. Well, like I said, but I've had mystical experiences of other types. But like I said, if it's one that requires like again, like my brain just still can't get around like if like the proposition that on the other end of this is some sort of like deity that wants me to get to know him, but it can only be done through this
That's not what I'm
certain like
saying. You see, that's your own theology that you're pushing forward
okay,
through
well
your own.
then I've
That's your
well
own
then
imagine. You're pushing. You're creating a straw man within your own head. What I'm trying to say is that there is a coherent form of the divine that you can understand through this experience if you just allowed yourself and availed yourself to have it. And you're like, okay, yeah, fine, you don't care. Well then forever stay confused, man. Like like forever not like it's no mystery to me. Like once you have it, then you don't have to question it anymore.
I'm not sure you're aware of how some of the ways you've phrased things come across.
I
Um,
apologize.
Now, just to kind of like maybe put a maybe a fine point on things.
Sure. I came out a little strong right there, but I
No,
mean,
I
I'll
think,
tell
And
you.
also, like, and I just
No, we
want to
get it.
say, like, for how I like specifically phrased that, and you said, "Well, that's a straw man." Like, that's just the words that came out of my like sleep deprived head right now. So don't reduce the specific words I said to be like a representation of the totality of
All
what
right.
I'm trying to express,
I'll blame
and
it
then
on
call
that
that a
gig.
straw man.
So I'll
So
say that the phenomenon you're describing, I think it's probably real, but like from what I understand about things, the phenomenon reveals itself as is appropriate. And I don't
Yeah.
know what appropriate means, but like we find it, it finds us. But um,
Perfect.
I
You said it.
wasn't talked into finding it. If we're thinking the
Yeah.
same thing, so I don't think trying to talk someone into it is going to be effective. Um,
I
my
agree.
concern is that if somebody is talked into it, that there's the potential that it becomes a kind of religious experience, where there's like a framework that on it that they acquire ahead of time. Um, but yeah, I would say just let it unfold. And
No, hey,
if
I
if
no,
people are
no, you said it, brother. I think that was perfect. That's a perfect note to end our interaction right here, man. I appreciate. I really liked you guys' input, man. You guys are very respectful, and
thanks.
yeah,
mhm.
I enjoyed
Yeah.
it, man. Thank you.
All right. Well, if that was a perfect note, allow me to fuck it up.
All
Like,
right.
you can say like if I'm like not willing to have these experiences, like based on what you think is some sort of like experience of the divine or whatever, and since I'm not allowed to, or since I'm not wanting to have this experience for some reason, that means I can't really, whether you want to say I can't really say I'm an atheist, or if I want to remain confused, or however you want to put it, I don't give a shit.
The ego is always right.
So
That's how I
what's
would put
that?
it. The ego is always right.
The ego is always right. Okay.
Yeah, because what do psychedelics do? They cause ego death. So as
Okay,
long
but
as you,
then, but what if I don't want to kill the ego?
well, then the ego's always right.
what if, okay.
When you have the psychedelics and you take a heroic dose, then you experience ego death. You realize the truth behind the veil of the ego.
Yeah, but again, but like, why do you know? Like, why is that the truth? It's just a different perspective. Why is
Okay,
that
as long
perspective
as you
bullshit?
avoid it, you're going to continue to question that with your ego. You
Okay,
see the you
is
see
that
the
is
issue?
that is that bad?
And if that's the way you want to live your life, bro, then that's up to you, man. That like shit. I'm not going to stop you.
Could have fooled us.
Right. Um. Yeah.
We should probably go. I gotta take a giant piss.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, man. I mean, yeah, you do have some residual fucking trauma there that's impeding, a more productive conversation. But I still love you, brother, and I hope you get through it. And
Which
you
one of
admit,
us are Which one of us are you talking to, or
man,
both?
you know who I'm talking to, man. Don't play dumb.
No, I honestly like. If have you did you watch
Shit.
the episode? We're both autistic. I like if you're expecting me to
No,
just
dude,
pick up
you
on
admitted
social cues.
yourself. I'm like, that may be some residual drama. Man, you admitted it yourself in our
No, yeah,
conversation.
like we had some spiritual abuse happen.
Well, I will
Yeah.
say, like when Matt was talking about the trauma stuff, like a lot of that, like I
No, I'm
was
talking
thinking
about
that
you,
doesn't really
man.
apply to me. Like for me, this is more like no, like my like resistance to like having the second, like I have no trauma like around any of that. I'm just like I just intellectually don't see what the point. Like, and again,
If
I'm
that's the
not.
narrative you want to buy into, man, I support you.
Well, I'm going to trust my narrative over your version of my
I
narrative.
support
That's
you.
for damn sure.
I support you,
So
man.
Oh, thank you.
I don't give a shit.
I still
If
love
I'm
you,
honest, I love you. I'm glad you interacted with us, but yeah,
man.
Not feeling it
no,
is what you're getting across.
yeah.
Man, um,
But if you want to continue to psychoanalyze me, that's fine. Uh, But
Yeah, there's
whatever.
no. We could get into that. Yeah, that is kind of a baggage thing because the reason why we're if I'm not I don't mean to speak for Tommy if this doesn't apply to you. We were told what our experiences were that we were having over and over again, and in a way that sort of brainwashed us into whatever putting our whatever experience we had into a particular narrative that was given to us by somebody else. So we're just kind of like maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but for myself, I my initial response when somebody tries to uh, give me a spirituality or a spiritual understanding of something is to like bristle at that and say nah, like just because I don't want to have another experience that feels like the past one that I had. Um, and then it happens in such a way that sometimes even if somebody doesn't have that in mind or like an evangelical mindset like trying to put like something on someone else that
No,
I can't hear what somebody is saying when it's said in the same in a
no,
similar
no.
manner.
Man, that beautifully said. And you know, like I will emphasize that point by saying I'm no mystic. You know, if I truly understood the principle of the golden rule, I wouldn't have lashed out at my brother over here. And you know, like, and I, you know, I hope you take care of your dear friend. And I love you both, man. Thank you for the discussion. I will end it here. I'll see you guys. You know, hopefully we have another discussion at a later time if it's cool with you guys.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we'll see. Because like I will say, like what Matt was saying about the trauma stuff. Like I said, he was. I guess he was like speaking for himself there. Because like for me, like I'm not saying he was doing that for me, but like to me, like it's almost saying, well, I feel like expressing things like that can make it come across like, well, the only reason I'm not agreeing with you is because of this trauma I'm dealing
Yeah.
with.
Okay, that's a good
And
point.
like, and I'm like, no, like to me, like it says nothing to do with any sort of trauma. I'm not even certain I've been through any kind of trauma when it comes to like religion or anything like that. No, it's really just like I'm, I'm averse to people telling me, oh, well, if you just do what I am suggesting, then you'll agree with me, or you'll see things the way I do. And if you don't, well, there must be some
No,
sort of trauma
but
you're dealing
that's
with,
not what
and
I.
like
I never
it's like
said
you're
that.
trying to put.
I never said that though. I said have it. I mean, at least you do it and then judge for yourself. You know, like I never said like you're gonna agree with me at the end. You know, like Terrence McKenna said, take it easy, but take it. You know, like um, it's a running joke. Terrence McKenna advocated the heroic dose. You know, take it easy.
That's why
You
I
know,
know that.
yeah, you got it.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, yeah, because like I
Yeah.
said, I know like in your mind because of like whatever experience you've had that like taking the heroic dose or whatever, like oh this is like the thing. But like I said, like I've heard that from so many people about
But
so
you
many
see,
different
but
things.
hold on,
So
wait. Like,
I'm not rejecting this because of any certain like specific trauma or whatever. It's
all right,
just like I said,
fine,
I've
but
heard this from so many
I think
people.
you're still missing my point. I'm
Okay,
not saying like you're like I heard this from so many people. I'm not talking about a notion or concept to be imbibed by the intellect. I'm saying undergo a phenomenon in consciousness, which I feel that you haven't. And you know that's my main point. And as long as you say that, oh, you know, I've heard this from so many people, then you completely miss my point. You know, and man, I'll leave it at that, man. You know, I have to have the story because I know you have beer in the fridge, but I don't. I'll see you, brothers. No, no, thank you, man. Hopefully, man, if you let me on next Wednesday, man, I would love to continue. Or no, I wouldn't even mind an offline conversation. You know, we don't have to make it live, but uh, I'll leave my email in the chat. Please get back to me, man.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for
trying
I
to
blanked out for a second. I was gonna say that. Fuck.
a phenomenon in
Stupid
consciousness. Thanks
autism.
for sharing a phenomenon in consciousness. At least tell me that. All right. All right. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
All right. Well, that was a thing.
A lot going on there. A lot of the same
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. I felt like a conversation worth having.
Yeah.
But I am tired.
Yeah. Me too. All right. Well, this went a lot of places.
Yeah, you could say that almost about every week.
Yeah. But speaking of neurodivergence, we got more to talk about next week, I guess, unless we change our minds again, which, hey, we've been known to do. But yeah, maybe specifically talking about like neurodivergence in Christianity and why a lot of people who are specifically autistic tend to leave Christianity, and for a lot of similar reasons.
Yeah, and it can be harmful to be neurodivergent,
Yeah.
and especially in evangelical Christian.
Right. So yeah. So if that sounds fun to you. All right.
Yeah, we'll
And
get
hopefully
spicier next week, I think.
Yeah, and hopefully
Yeah.
also next week back to 8:30, which is our old special time, and then back to the original time of 8 o'clock Eastern in a few weeks maybe. But yeah. All right. Take us out, Matt. I'm
Good
about to
times.
collapse.
May your things and stuff be forever with your people.
Good night. And RFK Jr. can go fuck himself.
Yay.
Bye.